They told Elena the debt would be settled. They lied. At 22, she thought literature exams and cappuccinos defined her world, until masked men dragged her from her apartment in the dead of night. No ransom call, no negotiation, just a private jet to nowhere, a silk gown she never chose, and a stage flooded with lights. Below her, the wealthiest monsters in Europe raised their paddles like she was a painting. When the bidding stopped, one man remained, Adrian Romano, crime lord, killer, and now, according to a piece of paper she never signed, her husband. Stay until the end to see how this story unfolds. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches across the world. The rain came down in sheets the night they took her. Elena Vieri had always thought Milan was beautiful in the rain, the way the lights reflected off wet cobblestones, how the Duomo looked like something from a dream through the mist. She'd walked these streets 1,000 times, sketchbook tucked under her arm, losing herself in the architecture, the faces, the stories written in every shadowed doorway. She'd never imagined one of those doorways would swallow her whole. It happened fast. One moment she was fumbling with her keys outside her apartment building, violin music drifting from a neighbor's window. The next, a hand clamped over her mouth, chemical sweet, suffocating. Her keys clattered to the ground. She tried to scream, tried to fight, but her vision blurred at the edges, darkness rushing in like a tide she couldn't outrun. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was the violin player's shadow in the window above, oblivious, still playing. When Elena woke, she wasn't in Milan anymore. The room was cold, sterile. White walls, white floors, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling like an interrogation light. She was lying on a narrow cot, still wearing the jeans and sweater she'd had on, but her shoes were gone. Her phone, her bag, her keys, all gone. Panic hit her like a physical blow. She sat up too fast, head spinning, stomach lurching. The room tilted. She pressed her palms to her temples, trying to steady herself, trying to think. Where was she? How long had she been unconscious? And why? Why would anyone take her? She wasn't rich. Her family had nothing. She was a literature student, living on pasta and scholarship money, spending her free time sketching in parks and dreaming of a future that probably wouldn't happen. She was nobody. Nothing. So why did someone want her? The door opened. Elena flinched back against the wall, heart hammering as a woman stepped inside. Tall, elegant, dressed in a black suit that probably cost more than Elena's entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled into a severe bun, her expression unreadable. Good. You're awake. The woman's accent was French, clipped and businesslike. Get up. We have a schedule to keep. Where am I? Elena's voice came out hoarse, shaking. What do you want from me? The woman didn't answer. She crossed to a wardrobe Elena hadn't noticed and pulled out a garment bag. You have 20 minutes to shower and dress. Someone will be here to do your hair and makeup. I'm not doing anything until you tell me what's going on. The woman turned, and for the first time something flickered in her eyes. Not sympathy, something colder. Your father owed a great deal of money to some very dangerous people. You are the payment. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't. My father? Elena whispered. My father's a teacher. He wouldn't. Your father, the woman interrupted, was a gambler, a poor one. He made promises he couldn't keep, borrowed from men who don't forgive debts. She hung the garment bag on a hook. He offered you as collateral 6 months ago. Tonight, that collateral will be collected. The room spun again, but this time it wasn't from drugs. Her father, the quiet man who'd taught philosophy at the university, who'd raised her alone after her mother died, who'd always seemed so sad, had sold her? No. Elena shook her head, backing against the wall. No, you're lying. He wouldn't. 18 minutes. The woman checked her watch. If you're not ready when they come for you, they'll drag you out as you are. I suggest you cooperate. She left without another word. Elena stared at the garment bag, at the closed door, at the walls closing in around her. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. Things like this didn't happen to girls like her. She was supposed to graduate in 6 months. She was supposed to have a normal life. But when she looked down at her hands, they were shaking so badly she could barely hold them still. She didn't have a choice. 15 minutes later, Elena stood in front of a mirror she wished didn't exist. The dress was beautiful. That was the worst part. Silk, the color of champagne, fitted at the bodice and flowing to the floor with delicate beading that caught the light like stars. It was the kind of dress a girl dreams about wearing to a gala, a wedding, somewhere magical. Not to her own auction. Two other women had come in after the first one left. They hadn't spoken except to give her instructions. Sit here, look up, don't move. They'd painted her face like a doll's, soft pink lips, dark eyes, skin buffed and glowing. They'd curled her dark hair into waves that cascaded down her back. When they finished, Elena barely recognized herself. Beautiful, one of them murmured. She'll bring a high price. Elena wanted to scream, to tear the dress off, to claw the makeup from her face, to run until her lungs gave out. But the door was locked, and even if it wasn't, where would she go? She didn't even know what country she was in. The first woman, the one in the black suit, returned with two men. Both were armed. Time to go, she said. They led her through a maze of corridors, all the same sterile white, until they reached a set of double doors. Elena could hear voices on the other side. Laughter, the clink of glasses. Her legs nearly gave out. Walk, one of the men said, his hand firm on her elbow. Smile if you value your life. The doors opened. The room beyond was elegant in a way that made Elena's skin crawl. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting warm light over marble floors and velvet curtains. A small stage stood at one end, spotlights aimed at its center. And below the stage, arranged in a semicircle, were perhaps 50 people. All of them wore masks. Ornate masks, like something from a Venetian carnival, gold and silver, feathered and jeweled, hiding every face completely. The crowd was dressed in expensive suits and gowns, champagne flutes in their hands, their attention fixed on the stage. On the auction block. Elena's stomach turned to ice. They guided her up the steps, positioning her in the center of the stage beneath the lights. The heat was intense, blinding. She couldn't see past the first few rows, couldn't make out individual faces behind the masks. Just shapes, shadows, monsters dressed as people. An auctioneer stepped forward, a man in a white mask shaped like a plague doctor's. His voice boomed through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, our final item of the evening, Elena Vieri, 22 years old, university educated, unspoiled, debt value, 300,000 euros. Unspoiled, like she was a piece of fruit. We'll start the bidding at 500,000. A paddle went up immediately, then another, and another. Elena couldn't breathe. The numbers climbed, 600,000, 700,000, a million, and with each one she felt herself disappearing. This was insane. This was medieval. How was this happening in the modern world, in Europe, in 2 million euros? The voice cut through the room like a blade, deep, calm, absolute. The other bidders hesitated. Paddles lowered. The auctioneer's head turned toward the back of the room, where a man sat alone in the shadows, partially obscured by a marble column. Elena couldn't see his face, only the outline of his shoulders, the way he held himself, perfectly still, utterly controlled. 2 million, the auctioneer repeated. Do I hear 2.5? Silence. No one else bid. No one even moved. Sold, the auctioneer declared, his gavel cracking like a gunshot. To Mr. Romano. Romano. The name meant nothing to Elena, but it clearly meant something to everyone else. People shifted in their seats. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Someone near the front actually stepped back. A man in a black mask leaned toward his companion. Adrian bought her himself? Unprecedented, the woman whispered back. He never bids directly. 2 guards appeared at Elena's sides, gripping her arms. She tried to pull away, but they were stronger, dragging her off the stage and toward a side exit. The crowd parted like water, no one willing to get too close. They brought her to a private room, smaller than the first, but just as cold. Leather furniture, a fireplace that wasn't lit, windows that showed nothing but darkness beyond. Wait here, one of the guards said. They left her alone. Elena stood in the center of the room, still wearing the dress, still shaking. Her mind raced through impossible scenarios. Could she run? Could she fight? Could she reason with whoever this Romano was, explain that there'd been a mistake, that she wasn't... The door opened. The man who entered was not what she expected. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with the kind of build that suggested violence even in stillness. Dark hair, cut short, a face that might have been handsome if it wasn't so hard, all sharp angles and shadows. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, black on black, with a single silver watch that probably cost more than her father's debts. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. Gray, cold, ancient, eyes that had seen things Elena couldn't imagine and felt nothing. He closed the door behind him and stood there for a moment, studying her the way someone might study a painting, not with lust or cruelty, just assessment. "Sit," he said finally. It wasn't a request. Elena's legs obeyed before her brain could catch up. She sank onto the leather sofa, hands clasped in her lap, trying not to shake. He crossed to a sideboard and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. Whiskey, maybe. He brought one to her, holding it out. "Drink. It'll help with the shock." "I don't want I wasn't asking." His voice was quiet, but there was steel beneath it, the kind of steel that had weight behind it, consequences. Elena took the glass with trembling hands. The whiskey burned going down, but he was right. It did help. A little. He sat across from her, perfectly at ease, one ankle crossed over his knee, sipping his own drink, watching her. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "My name is Adrian Romano. I control most of the import operations in Southern Europe, legitimate and otherwise." He paused. "I also own several debts your father accumulated over the past 3 years. Gambling debts, loan shark debts, the kind that don't get forgiven." "I didn't know," Elena whispered. "I swear I didn't know about any of it." "I believe you." He took another sip. "Your father was careful. He kept his addictions hidden, until he couldn't anymore." "Where is he? Is he—" "Alive. For now." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Whether he stays that way depends on you." The room tilted again. "What do you mean?" "I paid 2 million euros for you tonight. That clears his debts, and then some." "But money isn't what I want." He leaned forward slightly, those terrible gray eyes pinning her in place. "I want a wife." Elena's breath stopped. "Not a real one," Adrian continued, his tone unchanged. "A strategic one. I have enemies who believe I have weaknesses. A wife suggests stability, legitimacy, something they can't touch without significant consequences." "You want me to pretend to be your wife?" "No." He set his glass down. "I want you to be my wife. Legally, publicly. There's a difference." "This is insane," Elena breathed. "You can't just... People don't do this anymore. This is human trafficking, slavery. You can't..." "I can." His voice was still quiet, still calm. "And I have. The papers are already drawn up. We'll be married tomorrow morning. You'll live in my home, attend events at my side, and play the role I need you to play." "And if I refuse?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger, something worse. "Then your father dies slowly, and you'll be sold to the second highest bidder, a man who collects girls like trophies and discards them when he's bored." Adrian tilted his head slightly. "I'm offering you a choice, Elena. Not a good one, but a choice nonetheless. You can be my wife and live in comfort, or you can take your chances with men who won't give you even this much courtesy." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "Why me? Why not just hire someone?" "Because hired people can be bought. You can't. Your father's debts make you mine." He stood, buttoning his jacket. "You have until morning to decide. But know this. If you run, I'll find you. If you fight, you'll lose. The only path forward is through me." He walked to the door, then paused, glancing back. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I don't take pleasure in this. But I need a wife, and you need to survive. We can help each other, or we can make this harder than it needs to be." Then he was gone. Elena sat in the silence, the whiskey glass still clutched in her hands, her whole world shattered into pieces she couldn't put back together. Somewhere in the distance, a clock chimed midnight, and Elena Vieri, literature student, artist, daughter, ceased to exist. Morning came too fast and too slow. Elena hadn't slept. She'd spent the night in that cold room, curled on the leather sofa, running through escape scenarios that all ended the same way. with her caught, or dead, or worse. The woman in the black suit had brought her food she couldn't eat, clothes she didn't want to wear, a wedding dress. It was simpler than the auction gown, white silk, long sleeves, high neck, elegant, expensive, wrong. "He's waiting," the woman said. Elena dressed like a ghost going through motions. The ceremony was held in a private office somewhere in the same building. She still didn't know where she was. A magistrate who didn't make eye contact. 2 witnesses who might as well have been statues. And Adrian Romano, standing at the front in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. The words were in Italian, then French, then English. Something about legal binding, mutual consent, lies, all of it. But when the magistrate asked if she took this man as her husband, Elena heard herself say yes. Because what choice did she have? Adrian slid a ring onto her finger, platinum, with a diamond that caught the light like a shard of ice. When it was his turn, she did the same, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped the band. "You may kiss the bride." Adrian's hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up. His lips brushed hers, barely a touch, cold and impersonal. It lasted less than a second, then it was done. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Romano," the magistrate said, closing his book. The witnesses left. The magistrate left. Elena stood there in her white dress, a wife to a stranger, a prisoner with a ring. Adrian extended his hand. "The car is waiting." She didn't take it. She couldn't. He lowered his hand, nodding slightly. "As you wish." They walked through more corridors, out into blinding sunlight. Elena squinted, realizing for the first time that they were at some kind of private estate, sprawling grounds, high walls, mountains in the distance. Beautiful. Isolated. A black car waited in the circular drive, sleek and expensive. A driver held the door open. Adrian gestured for her to enter. "Where are we going?" Elena asked, her first words since the ceremony. "Home," Adrian said. The drive took 2 hours. Elena watched the landscape change through the tinted windows, mountains giving way to coastline, cities to countryside. They were somewhere in southern Europe, she thought. Italy, maybe, or southern France. Somewhere warm, where the sea glittered like broken glass under the sun. They didn't speak. Adrian worked on a laptop, making calls in languages Elena didn't understand. She sat as far from him as possible, watching the world pass by, wondering if she'd ever be part of it again. The car finally turned down a private road, winding up a cliff face. At the top sat a fortress. That was the only word for it. Stone and glass, built into the cliff itself, overlooking an impossible drop to the ocean below. Walls, gates, security everywhere. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, like something from a medieval legend, updated for the modern age. "This is your home now," Adrian said as the car stopped. Elena stepped out, the sea wind whipping her hair, the sound of waves crashing far below. The fortress loomed above them, all sharp angles and shadows. A woman appeared at the entrance, older, gray-haired, kind-faced. She smiled at Elena, the first genuine smile she'd seen in days. "Welcome, Mrs. Romano. I'm Maria, the head housekeeper. Let me show you to your rooms." Rooms, plural. That was something, at least. Maria led her inside, through hallways that managed to be both luxurious and austere. Modern art on the walls, expensive furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows that showed nothing but ocean and sky. It felt more like a museum than a home. They climbed a staircase to the second floor, down another hallway, stopping at a set of double doors. "Your suite," Maria said, pushing them open. The room beyond was stunning. A bedroom 3 times the size of Elena's old apartment, with a 4-poster bed, a fireplace, French doors opening onto a balcony, an ensuite bathroom with a tub that could fit 4 people, a walk-in closet already filled with clothes in her size. "Mr. Romano's rooms are across the hall," Maria said gently. "You have complete privacy here. He won't enter without permission." Elena turned to her, hope sparking for the first time. "Really?" "Really." Maria's smile was sad. "He's not a monster, dear, just complicated." She left Elena alone. Elena stood in the center of her gilded cage, still wearing her wedding dress, and finally let herself cry. 3 days passed in a fog. Elena barely left her room. Maria brought her meals she picked at, clothes she changed into mechanically. She spent hours on the balcony, staring at the ocean, wondering if she could survive the fall if she jumped. She probably couldn't. On the fourth day, there was a knock at her door. Adrian. "May I come in?" Elena almost said no, but something in his voice, a note of genuine request, not command, made her hesitate. "Fine." He entered, looking somehow different in casual clothes. Dark jeans, a gray sweater. Less like a crime lord, more like a man. Still dangerous, but human. "You haven't been eating," he said. "I'm not hungry." "You haven't left your room." "I'm a prisoner. Where would I go?" Adrian was quiet for a moment, hands in his pockets. "You're not a prisoner, Elena. You're my wife." "Same thing?" "No," he said quietly. "It isn't." He crossed to the French doors, looking out at the ocean. "I know you hate me. You have every right to, but hating me won't change our situation. Then let me go." "I can't." He turned back to her. "If I let you go, you become a target. Every enemy I have will use you against me. You're safer here." "I don't feel safe." "I know." Something in his expression shifted. Just for a moment she saw something beneath the ice. Regret, maybe. Or exhaustion. "But I'm trying." He walked back to the door, pausing before he left. "There's something I want to show you. Tomorrow morning, if you're willing." Elena didn't answer. But the next morning, when Maria knocked to tell her Mr. Romano was waiting, Elena found herself getting dressed. He led her through the fortress, down hallways she hadn't seen, until they reached a door at the far end of the east wing. He unlocked it and stepped aside. "Go ahead." Elena hesitated, then walked through and stopped. It was a studio, a real artist's studio, flooded with natural light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Easels, canvases, paints in every color imaginable. Brushes, charcoals, pastels, a drafting table with professional pencils, everything an artist could dream of. "How did you—" Elena's voice broke. "Your apartment, before they took you. I saw your sketches." Adrian leaned against the doorframe. "You're talented. It seemed wasteful to let that die." Elena walked deeper into the room, running her fingers over the easels, the paints. It was perfect, too perfect. "Why?" she whispered. "Because you're going to be here a long time," Adrian said quietly. "You should have something that's yours." He left her there. Elena stood in the studio, surrounded by light and possibility, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt something other than fear. She felt confused. But the days began to blur together, taking on a strange rhythm. Mornings, Elena painted. She'd wake early, drawn to the studio like a compass finding north, and lose herself in color and form. She painted the ocean, the cliffs, the light as it changed throughout the day. Sometimes she painted memories. Her old apartment, the streets of Milan, her father's face before she knew what he'd done. Adrian left her alone during these hours. She rarely saw him, actually. He disappeared early each day, business, she assumed, the kind she didn't want to know about, and returned late. They took dinner separately, lived separate lives under the same roof. It should have been a relief, but sometimes late at night, Elena would hear his footsteps in the hallway outside her room, pacing, restless. He never knocked, never tried to enter, just walked back and forth until the early hours, then retreated to his own rooms. She told herself she didn't care. 2 weeks after the wedding, Elena ventured beyond her wing for the first time. The fortress was larger than she'd realized, a maze of rooms and corridors, a library with volumes in a dozen languages, a gym with equipment that looked military grade, a wine cellar that probably cost more than a small country. She found Maria in the kitchen, preparing lunch. "Oh, Mrs. Romano, I wasn't expecting you." The older woman smiled warmly. "Are you hungry? I can make you something." "I'm fine. I just—" Elena hesitated. "I wanted to see more of the house." "Of course. Would you like a tour?" They spent the afternoon wandering the fortress. Maria showed her the formal dining room, only used for important guests, and the conservatory, where orchids bloomed in perfect rows, the ballroom, empty and echoing, the terraces with their impossible views. "It's very empty," Elena observed. "Mr. Romano doesn't entertain much," Maria said carefully. "He prefers solitude." But he wanted a wife." "Yes, Maria's expression grew thoughtful. Strange, isn't it? A man who guards his privacy so fiercely, suddenly marrying. They returned to the main floor, passing the study. The door was ajar and Elena caught a glimpse of Adrian inside, bent over a desk covered in papers, phone pressed to his ear. Speaking rapid Italian, his voice sharp with authority. He looked up, and their eyes met. Elena quickly looked away, but not before she saw something flicker in his expression. He ended his call. Elena. She stopped. Maria quietly excused herself. Come in, Adrian said. It wasn't a command, but Elena found herself obeying anyway. The study was masculine, dark wood, leather, shelves lined with books that looked actually read, a fireplace crackling with real flame. Maria was showing me the house, Elena said, staying near the door. I'm glad. Adrian set his phone down. You should feel free to go anywhere you like. Anywhere except outside the gates. The gates are for your protection. Or to keep me trapped. Adrian was quiet for a moment, then gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit, please. Elena hesitated, then complied. The leather was soft, expensive. Everything in this place was. I want to show you something, Adrian said. He pulled a file from his desk and slid it across to her. Open it. Elena did. Inside were photographs. Surveillance photos, she realized, of people, men mostly, in various locations. Some were candid shots, others looked like they'd been taken from security footage. What is this? These are the men who were at your auction, Adrian said quietly. The ones who bid on you. Elena's stomach turned. This one, Adrian tapped a photo of a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, collects women like art, keeps them in his estate until he tires of them, then has them killed. This one, another photo, specializes in trafficking. The women he buys are never seen again. And this one, he indicated a third, enjoys breaking things. He closed the file. You asked me once why I bought you. The truth is, I couldn't let any of them have you. Elena's hands were shaking again. So you saved me? No. Adrian's voice was hard. I'm not a hero, Elena. I'm exactly what you think I am. But I have rules. Lines I don't cross. Like human trafficking? Like unnecessary cruelty. He stood, walking to the window. I didn't put you on that stage. Your father did. I just limited the damage. By making me your wife. Yes. Elena studied his back, the rigid set of his shoulders, the way he held himself like a man carrying weight no one else could see. I don't understand you, she said quietly. I know. Adrian didn't turn around. I don't need you to. I just need you to survive this. Survive what? Me. This life. Everything it means to be married to someone like me. He turned then, and in the firelight his face looked different, older, tired. I won't touch you, he said. I won't hurt you, but I can't let you go either. So we exist in this space between. You paint, I work. We share a name and a home and nothing else. For how long? I don't know. Elena stood, crossing to face him. She was tall, but he was taller, forcing her to look up. What do you want from me, Adrian? For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then so quietly she almost missed it. To not be alone. The honesty in his voice startled her. Before she could respond, his phone rang. He glanced at it, and his expression shuttered closed again. I have to take this. Excuse me. He left her in his study, surrounded by evidence of a life she couldn't comprehend, with words echoing in her head that made her captor seem almost human. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She stood on her balcony, wrapped in a robe, watching the moon paint silver on the dark water. Somewhere below, waves crashed against rocks. The sound should have been soothing. It wasn't. She kept thinking about the photographs, about the men who'd wanted her, about what Adrian had said. I couldn't let any of them have you. Was that protection, or just a different kind of possession? She heard the footsteps before she saw him. Adrian emerged onto his own balcony, directly across from hers, separated by perhaps 15 feet of night air. He didn't notice her at first, just stood there staring at the ocean, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He looked as sleepless as she felt. Can't sleep either? Elena asked. He turned, surprise flickering across his face. No. Insomnia is an old friend. What do you think about? She didn't know why she asked. When you can't sleep. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Everything I've done, he said finally. Everything I can't undo. Regrets? Too many to count. Elena leaned against the railing. Then why keep doing it? Because once you start down this path, there's no walking back. You either keep moving forward or you die. That sounds exhausting. It is. He took a sip of whiskey. What about you? What keeps you awake? Fear, Elena admitted. Of this. Of you. Of who I'm becoming. Who are you becoming? I don't know yet. That's what scares me. They stood in silence, two strangers on separate balconies, connected by nothing but darkness and honesty. I'm sorry, Adrian said suddenly. Elena looked at him. For what? For all of it. The auction, the marriage. Taking your choices. He turned to face her fully. You deserve better than this. Then let me... I can't, he interrupted. I wish I could, but I can't. Why not? Because the moment you leave my protection, you become a target. And I won't... He stopped himself. I can't let that happen. There was something in his voice, something that sounded almost like caring? No, that was impossible. Good night, Elena, Adrian said, draining his glass. He disappeared inside before she could respond. Elena remained on the balcony long after he'd gone, wondering why his apology had felt more dangerous than his control. 3 weeks into her captivity, no, her marriage, Elena's world shifted again. She was in her studio, working on a piece she couldn't quite get right. A portrait, though she hadn't admitted whose. The face kept emerging from the canvas despite her best efforts. Sharp features, gray eyes, shadows that suggested violence and vulnerability in equal measure. She was so absorbed she didn't hear the door open. That's quite good. Elena spun around, nearly dropping her brush. Adrian stood in the doorway, dressed for business in a dark suit, but his attention was fixed on her canvas. I'm not finished, Elena said quickly, moving to block his view. But he'd already seen it. Recognition flickered in his eyes, then something else. Surprise, maybe, or discomfort. Is that meant to be me? No, I mean, I wasn't trying to. Elena stumbled over the lie. It just came out this way. Adrian stepped closer, studying the painting. You made me look human. You are human. Debatable. But there was the ghost of a smile at the corner of his mouth, the first she'd ever seen. He turned his attention to the rest of the studio, taking in the dozens of canvases she'd completed. Seascapes and sunsets, architectural studies, abstract explosions of color. You're prolific, he observed. I have a lot of time. And a lot to process, I imagine. He paused at a particularly dark piece, all blacks and grays and angry reds. This one is different. That's the night they took me. Adrian studied it for a long moment. I'm sorry you went through that. You paid for me to go through it. No, I paid to end it. He looked at her. There's a difference. Not to me. I know. They stood in uncomfortable silence, surrounded by Elena's attempts to paint her way through trauma. I came to tell you something, Adrian said finally. There's an event tomorrow night, a charity gala in Monte Carlo. I need you to attend with me. Elena's stomach dropped. No, it's not a request. I'm not going to parade around as your wife, pretending to be happy. I'm not asking you to be happy. Adrian's voice was firm, but not unkind. I'm asking you to play a role for 3 hours. We arrive, we make an appearance, we leave. That's all. Why do you need me there? Because my wife's presence legitimizes me in certain circles, makes me seem stable, domestic. His mouth twisted on the last word like it tasted bitter. And because my enemies need to see you're real. Your enemies, Elena repeated. You mean people who want to kill you? Yes. And you want to show me off to them? I want to show them you're under my protection, that touching you means war. Adrian's eyes darkened. It's insurance, Elena, for both of us. I don't want to go. I know, but you will. He left her with that certainty, that quiet command she was learning couldn't be fought. Elena stared at her unfinished portrait of him, wondering when she'd started seeing the man instead of the monster. The dress arrived that evening. Maria brought it up herself, hanging it carefully in Elena's closet. Midnight blue silk, elegant and expensive, with a neckline that managed to be both modest and devastating. "He has good taste," Maria said approvingly. "He's a criminal," Elena countered. "He's many things." Maria smoothed the fabric. "But he's not cruel. Remember that, dear." Elena wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. That night she dreamed of the auction, of being paraded on stage, of paddles rising, of gray eyes watching from the shadows. But in the dream, when Adrian bought her, he didn't walk away. He reached for her hand. She woke before she could see if she took it. Morning came too fast. The day passed in a blur of preparation, hair, makeup, the dress that fit like it had been made for her. Because it probably had. When Elena finally looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. Elegant, polished, every inch the wife of a powerful man. A knock at her door. "Come in." Adrian entered, and for the first time she saw him truly dressed for this world. A tuxedo that had definitely been tailored, cufflinks that caught the light, hair styled just enough to look effortless. He looked like power incarnate. His eyes swept over her, and something flickered in their depths. Appreciation, maybe. Or possession. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "I look like property." "You look like my wife." He extended his hand. "Shall we?" Elena stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, hating herself for it, she took it. His grip was warm, steady, and for reasons she couldn't explain, terrifying. The helicopter ride to Monte Carlo was surreal. Elena had never been in a helicopter before, had never seen the Mediterranean from above, all golden light and impossible blue. Adrian sat across from her, reviewing something on his tablet, occasionally taking calls in languages she didn't understand, but every now and then she'd catch him watching her, his expression unreadable. "Nervous?" he asked at one point. "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." He set his tablet aside. "There are things you need to know before we arrive." Elena listened as he explained the politics of his world, who to greet, who to avoid, what questions she shouldn't answer. It was like learning to navigate a minefield. "And if someone asks how we met," Elena asked, "tell them the truth. We were introduced through family." "That's not the truth." "It's close enough." Adrian's eyes held hers. "The full truth would get us both killed." The helicopter began its descent toward a building that looked like it had been carved from light itself, all glass and gold, perched on the edge of the water. "Remember," Adrian said as they landed, "you're under my protection. No one will touch you. No one will harm you. But you stay by my side. Understand?" Elena nodded, her throat too tight for words. The door opened. The noise of the city rushed in. Music, laughter, the hum of expensive cars. Adrian exited first, then turned to help her down. The moment her feet touched the ground, his hand settled at the small of her back. Possessive, protective. And the cameras started flashing. Elena hadn't expected photographers. Dozens of them, held back by velvet ropes and security, shouting questions in multiple languages. "Mr. Romano, who's your companion? Is this your wife? When did you get married?" Adrian's hand pressed more firmly against her back, guiding her forward. He didn't answer their questions, just kept moving toward the entrance with the confidence of someone who owned the world. Inside, the gala was everything Elena had imagined wealth to be. Crystal chandeliers dripping light, champagne flowing like water, women in gowns that cost more than cars, men in tuxedos discussing deals over caviar. And everyone stared. At Adrian, yes, but more than that, at her. She felt their eyes like physical touches, curious, calculating, envious. "Ignore them," Adrian murmured in her ear. "They're insects." A waiter appeared with champagne. Adrian took 2 glasses, handing one to Elena. "Smile," he said quietly. "We're supposed to be happy." Elena forced her lips into something approximating joy. They moved through the crowd, Adrian greeting people with practiced ease. Politicians, businessmen, celebrities whose faces Elena recognized from magazines. Each conversation was brief, transactional, revealing nothing. And through it all, his hand never left her back. After an hour, Elena needed air. "I need the restroom," she whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. "I'll take you. I can find it myself. Elena, I won't run. I need a minute, please." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. Then I'm coming to find you." The restroom was mercifully empty. Elena locked herself in a stall and tried to remember how to breathe. This was too much. The lights, the people, the cameras, the weight of being Adrian Romano's wife. She emerged to find a woman at the mirrors. Blonde, stunning, draped in emerald silk. She watched Elena with undisguised interest. "So you're the one who caught him," the woman said in accented English. "French, maybe." Elena froze. "I'm sorry?" "Adrian Romano, Europe's most eligible bachelor. Or he was, until you." The woman's smile was sharp. "I'm curious. How did you manage it?" We met through family." "How romantic." The woman moved closer. "Word of advice, darling. Men like Adrian don't change. They just get better at hiding who they are." "I don't know what you— Oh, he's dangerous. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's promised, it's a lie. He's incapable of love, only possession." The woman left before Elena could respond, her perfume lingering like a warning. Elena stared at her reflection. The makeup, the dress, the ring. Only possession. When she returned to the ballroom, Adrian was waiting exactly where she'd left him. His eyes found her immediately, scanning her face. "Are you all right?" "Fine, just— someone said something." His expression darkened. "Who?" "I don't know her name. Blonde, green dress." "Margot." Adrian's voice went cold. "Stay away from her." "Who is she?" "Someone from my past. Someone who doesn't matter anymore." But the way he said it suggested she mattered very much. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. More conversations, more champagne, more stares. By the time they left, Elena's face hurt from fake smiling. The helicopter ride back was silent. Adrian sat across from her, staring out at the night, his expression unreadable. But his hands, Elena noticed, were clenched into fists. "You did well tonight," he said finally. "I felt like a trained animal." "You felt like my wife." He turned to look at her. "That's all anyone needed to see." "Is that all I am to you? A performance?" Adrian didn't answer, and somehow his silence was worse than any words. They landed at the fortress as midnight approached. Adrian helped her from the helicopter, his touch brief and impersonal. "Get some rest," he said. "We'll talk tomorrow." But as Elena headed for her room, she heard him stop. "Elena." She turned. He stood silhouetted against the night sky, the fortress looming behind him, looking every inch the crime lord he was. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For tonight. I know it wasn't easy." Then he was gone, disappearing into his own wing, leaving Elena alone with too many questions and not enough answers. She stood in the hallway for a long moment, still wearing the midnight blue dress, the ring heavy on her finger, and realized, with a jolt that terrified her, that she'd stopped seeing Adrian Romano as her captor, somewhere between the paintings and the balconies and the way he'd kept his hand on her back all night. She'd started seeing him as a man. That was the most dangerous thing of all. Elena woke the next morning to rain hammering against her windows and a realization that felt like drowning. She'd slept better than she had in weeks, not because the bed was comfortable, though it was, or because the sound of the ocean had finally become familiar, but because somewhere in the dangerous space between midnight and dawn, fear had shifted into something else, something she didn't want to name. She found herself thinking about the way Adrian's hand had stayed at her back all night, not gripping, not controlling, just there, present, protective even. She hated that she'd noticed. Maria brought breakfast on a tray, coffee, pastries, fresh fruit. The older woman seemed to sense Elena's mood, keeping her usual cheerful chatter to a minimum. "Mr. Romano asked if you'd join him in the library at 11, Maria said as she arranged the tray. "He said it's not urgent, only if you're feeling up to it." Elena glanced at the clock. 9:30. She had 90 minutes to decide whether she wanted to face him. She spent 89 of them in the studio, attacking a canvas with colors that had no business being together, violent reds bleeding into deep blues, slashes of white like screaming. It was angry work, cathartic, the kind of painting that left her breathless and shaking. When she finally set down her brush, she realized she'd painted imprisonment, the feeling of it, rendered in abstract fury. At 11 exactly, she knocked on the library door. "Come in." Adrian sat in a leather chair by the window, a book open in his lap, reading glasses perched on his nose. The glasses surprised her. They made him look younger, more approachable, almost scholarly. He looked up, and something in his expression softened when he saw her. "Thank you for coming." He marked his page and set the book aside. "I wanted to discuss last night." Elena remained by the door, arms crossed defensively. "What about it?" "How you felt. Whether it was too much." Adrian removed his glasses, folding them carefully. "I know I pushed you into it. I want to know if there are boundaries I crossed that I shouldn't cross again." The question caught her off guard. She'd expected orders, not consideration. "Everyone stared," Elena said finally, "like I was some kind of exotic animal you'd brought to show off." "I know. I'm sorry." Adrian stood, moving to the window. The rain streaked down the glass behind him. "In my world, new wives are examined like acquisitions. It's invasive and demeaning. I should have warned you more thoroughly. Would it have made a difference? No. But you deserve to know what you were walking into." Elena crossed to a bookshelf, running her fingers along leather spines. History, philosophy, literature in multiple languages. She pulled out a worn copy of Dante's Inferno, surprised to find margin notes in what looked like Adrian's handwriting. "You read this?" she asked. "Multiple times. Why?" "I studied it at university, 3rd year." Elena opened to a random page, finding a passage underlined. "What circle of hell do you think you belong in?" Adrian's smile was bitter. "All of them, depending on the day." "That's not how it works." "Isn't it?" He moved closer, looking at the book over her shoulder. "Fraud, violence, treachery, I've committed all of it. Dante would have trouble choosing." Elena turned to face him, the book still open between them. "The woman at the gala, Margot. She said you're incapable of love." Adrian's jaw tightened. "She's not wrong." "Then why marry? Why go through this elaborate performance?" "Because love and necessity aren't the same thing." Adrian took the book from her hands, setting it aside. "I told you, I needed a wife. You needed protection. Emotions don't factor into it." "Don't they?" Elena challenged. "You apologized. You built me a studio. You asked about boundaries. Those aren't the actions of someone incapable of feeling. Those are the actions of someone trying to be less of a monster than he is." Adrian's voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Don't mistake pragmatism for emotion, Elena. It'll only hurt you." "And what if I'm already hurt?" The question hung between them, dangerous and honest. Adrian studied her face, his gray eyes searching for something. "Then I'm sorry, truly. That was never my intention." "What was your intention?" "To keep you alive. To keep you safe." He turned back to the window. "Everything else is collateral damage." Elena wanted to argue, to push back against his coldness, but something in the rigid set of his shoulders told her this conversation was over. "Was there anything else?" she asked. "Yes. There's a charity I'm involved with, a foundation that helps victims of trafficking." Adrian's reflection in the rain-streaked window looked almost vulnerable. "I'd like you to visit with me next week, if you're willing." "Why?" "Because they need to see my wife cares, and because—" He paused. "Because I think you might actually care, not as a performance, as yourself." Elena didn't know what to say to that. "Think about it," Adrian said. "You don't have to decide now." She left him in the library, surrounded by his books and his careful distance, wondering which version of him was real, the crime lord who'd bought her, or the man who read Dante and funded trafficking foundations. Maybe they were both real. Maybe that was the problem. The next few days settled into an uneasy routine. Elena painted in the mornings, explored the fortress in the afternoons, and found herself increasingly aware of Adrian's presence even when he wasn't there. His coffee cup left in the kitchen, his jacket draped over a chair in the study, the sound of his voice drifting from behind closed doors, speaking in languages she didn't understand about business she didn't want to know. They crossed paths at odd hours, in hallways, on balconies, once in the library at 3 in the morning when neither of them could sleep. "You're reading my notes," Adrian observed, nodding at the copy of Inferno in her hands. "You have interesting interpretations. Violent men often do." He poured himself a whiskey from the bar cart. "Want one?" "I don't drink." "You did, at the gala." "That was different. I was terrified." "And now?" Elena considered. "I'm still terrified, just of different things." Adrian settled into the chair across from her. "Like what?" "Like forgetting to hate you." The honesty surprised them both. Adrian was quiet for a long moment, swirling his whiskey. "Would that be so terrible?" he asked finally. "Yes, because hating you makes this easier." "If I stop," she closed the book. "If I stop, then I have to face what this actually is." "And what is it?" "I don't know. That's what scares me." Adrian stood, setting down his unfinished drink. "For what it's worth, I don't hate you, Elena. I never have." "What do you feel, then?" He looked at her for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. "Responsible, guilty, and something else I don't have a name for." Then he left her alone with Dante and too many thoughts. The invitation came 3 days later. Not an invitation exactly, more of an announcement. Maria delivered it with breakfast. Adrian needed her to attend a business dinner. Nothing as elaborate as the gala, just a small gathering at the fortress. 8 guests, formal dress. "He said you can say no," Maria added, "but he'd appreciate it if you said yes." Elena thought about refusing, but curiosity won out. What kind of business could Adrian possibly conduct here, in his fortress, with her present? "What time?" 7. I'll bring up a dress." The gown Maria selected was deep crimson, elegant but understated. Elena did her own hair this time, pulling it into a simple twist. When she studied her reflection, she saw someone who was starting to belong to this world. That thought should have terrified her. Instead, it just made her tired. Adrian was waiting at the bottom of the stairs when she descended. He'd changed into a tailored suit, his hair styled, every inch the powerful businessman. But when he saw her, something flickered in his eyes, appreciation mixed with something darker. "You look stunning," he said quietly. "Thank you." Elena accepted his offered arm because refusing would have been childish. "Who are we entertaining?" "Associates? Some from legitimate businesses, others less so." Adrian led her toward the formal dining room. "Just smile and be yourself. That's all I need." "Myself, or the woman you want me to be?" "With you, I'm starting to think they might be the same person." Before Elena could respond, the first guests arrived. The evening was surreal. 8 people gathered around Adrian's table, 3 couples and 2 single men, all polished, wealthy, speaking in careful euphemisms about import operations and distribution networks. Elena recognized the code for what it was. Crime dressed in business casual. But what surprised her was how normal it all seemed. These weren't the masked monsters from her auction. They were people, flawed, complex, some even kind. The woman to Elena's left, Isabella, wife of a shipping magnate, asked about her art with genuine interest. "Adrian mentioned you paint. What's your medium?" "Oils, mostly. Sometimes acrylics when I want faster drying." "I'd love to see your work sometime." "Adrian's been so secretive about you." Isabella's smile was warm. "We were all shocked when he announced he'd married. Adrian Romano settled down. None of us thought we'd see the day." "It was rather sudden," Elena managed. "The best things usually are." Isabella's husband joined the conversation then, steering it toward business, and Elena was grateful for the reprieve. Across the table, Adrian was deep in discussion with one of the single men, a younger guy, maybe 30, with sharp eyes and nervous energy. Their conversation was in rapid Italian, but Elena caught enough words to understand it was about territory, expansion, competition. Adrian's hand cut through the air, decisive. "No, we don't move on the North District. Not worth the war it would start. But the profit margin isn't worth the bodies." Adrian's voice was quiet but absolute. "Find another way." The younger man subsided, chastened. Elena found herself studying Adrian's profile, the hard line of his jaw, the way he commanded the table without raising his voice. This was his element. Not the fortress or the library or the quiet moments on balconies, but this, power wielded with precision. She should have been repulsed. Instead, she was fascinated. Dinner stretched into dessert, then coffee, then brandy. The conversation flowed around Elena like water around a stone. She was present but separate, watching this world from the inside out. Finally, near midnight, the guests began departing. Adrian walked them out personally, leaving Elena alone in the dining room with the ruins of an elegant meal. She wandered to the windows, looking out at darkness and rain. "You did well tonight." Elena turned to find Adrian leaning in the doorway, tie loosened, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "I barely spoke." "You didn't have to. Your presence was enough." He crossed to the bar, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "They needed to see you, to understand you're real." "Why does that matter?" "Because as long as they believe I have something to lose, they'll think twice before moving against me." Adrian handed her a glass. "You're my weakness and my strength, both at once." Elena sipped the wine, rich, expensive, probably older than she was. "That woman, Isabella, she seemed nice." "She is. Her husband is a sociopath, but Isabella herself is genuinely kind." "How does that work?" "The same way any marriage works. Compromise. Carefully maintain boundaries. Willful ignorance about certain activities." Adrian swirled his wine. "She knows what he is. She just chooses to see the parts she can live with." "Is that what you expect from me?" "No. I expect you to see exactly what I am. All of it." Adrian's eyes met hers. "No illusions, Elena. That's the only honesty I can offer you." They stood in silence, drinking wine, rain drumming against the windows. "The foundation," Elena said finally. "The one for trafficking victims. When are we visiting?" Adrian's expression shifted. Surprise, then something that might have been hope. "Thursday, if you're sure." "I'm not sure about anything anymore, but I'll go." "Thank you." The gratitude in his voice was so genuine it made Elena's chest ache. She set down her wine glass, suddenly needing distance. "I should get to bed. It's late." "Elena." She paused at the doorway. "I meant what I said. You did well tonight, not as my wife, as yourself." Adrian remained by the windows, silhouetted against the storm. "You're stronger than you think." Elena didn't trust herself to respond. She just left, climbing the stairs to her room, feeling the weight of his words settle somewhere dangerous near her heart. Thursday arrived wrapped in fog. The foundation was housed in a converted villa outside Nice, beautiful, discreet, surrounded by gardens that probably looked cheerful in sunlight. Today, everything was gray and muted. Adrian led her inside, his hand at her back again. That touch was becoming familiar, almost comforting. A woman met them in the foyer, mid-40s, kind eyes, wearing a sweater that had seen better days. "Mr. Romano, thank you for coming." She smiled at Elena. "And you must be his wife. I'm Dr. Rousseau. I run the foundation." "It's nice to meet you," Elena said, meaning it. Dr. Rousseau led them on a tour, explaining the foundation's work. Housing for women escaping trafficking situations, counseling, job training, legal assistance. It was comprehensive, well-funded, genuinely helpful. "We serve about 40 women at any given time," Dr. Rousseau explained. "Some stay a few weeks, others a few months, whatever they need to get back on their feet." "Who funds this?" Elena asked. "Several donors. Mr. Romano is our largest contributor." Dr. Rousseau glanced at Adrian with obvious respect. "He's very committed to the work." They visited the common areas, a library, a dining room, a courtyard where several women sat talking despite the fog. Some glanced up as they passed, curiosity mixed with caution. One woman, young, maybe Elena's age, with haunted eyes, stared at Adrian with something like recognition. "Do I know you?" she asked in accented English. Adrian stopped. "I don't think so." "You were there. The night they raided the house in Marseille, you—" The woman's eyes widened. "You got me out!" Adrian's expression remained neutral, but Elena felt him tense. "I'm glad you're safe." "You killed 3 men." "I did what was necessary." The woman studied him for a long moment, then turned to Elena. "Your husband is a complicated man." "So I'm learning," Elena said quietly. Later in Dr. Rousseau's office, Elena asked the question burning in her mind. How is Adrian involved in this? Really? Dr. Rousseau glanced at Adrian, who nodded permission. Mr. Romano moves in certain circles, circles where trafficking happens. When he learns of situations, he intervenes. She chose her words carefully, sometimes violently. He brings the women here. We help them rebuild. So he saves them. In his way, yes. Elena looked at Adrian, who was studying a painting on the wall with sudden fascination. Why? She asked him directly. For a long moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, so quietly she almost missed it. Because no one saved my mother. The words hung in the air, heavy with old pain. Dr. Rousseau stood diplomatically. I'll give you two a moment. When they were alone, Elena crossed to where Adrian stood. What happened to your mother? Same thing that almost happened to you. Trafficked, sold, used. Adrian's voice was flat, emotionless. She died when I was 8, in a brothel, beaten to death by a client. Elena's hand found his without thinking. Adrian, I'm so sorry. Don't be, it was a long time ago. That doesn't make it hurt less. He looked down at their joined hands, seeming surprised to find them connected. No, it doesn't. Is that why you bought me? Because of her? Partially. I saw you on that stage, terrified, and I saw her. Saw what her last moments might have looked like. Adrian's jaw tightened. I couldn't let them have you, any of them. So you saved me. I claimed you. There's a difference. Is there? Elena stepped closer. You gave me a home, safety, space to breathe. That sounds like saving to me. Or a different kind of prison. Maybe, but at least this prison has windows. Adrian's thumb brushed across her knuckles, barely a touch, but Elena felt it everywhere. You confuse me, Elena. How? Because you should hate me. You have every right to. But sometimes when you look at me, he trailed off. I can't tell what you're thinking. I'm thinking you're not the man I thought you were. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet. They stood there, hands linked, surrounded by evidence of his complicated morality, violence used for protection, crime funding, salvation. The drive back to the fortress was quiet. Elena stared out the window, processing everything she'd learned. Adrian worked on his tablet, but she caught him glancing at her more than once. Thank you for going with me today, he said, as they pulled through the gates. Thank you for showing me. Elena turned to face him. I needed to see that side of you. Even though it doesn't erase what I am? Especially because of that. You're right, you're complicated. But maybe complicated is better than simple. Adrian's expression was unreadable. You're dangerous, you know that? How am I dangerous? Because you make me want things I shouldn't want, feel things I can't afford to feel. Before Elena could respond, he was out of the car, putting distance between them again. But that night, when Elena stood on her balcony, Adrian appeared on his. Can't sleep? She asked. Never can. He leaned against the railing. Too many ghosts. Your mother? Among others. Adrian looked at her across the space between their balconies. Do you ever think about your father? Every day. I hate him for what he did, but I also, Elena's voice caught. I also miss him. Is that wrong? No, it's human. Adrian's voice was soft. I hated my mother for getting caught in that life. Blamed her even though she had no choice. It took me years to understand that anger was easier than grief. What changed? I grew up, started seeing patterns, realized the men who hurt her were still hurting women just like her. He paused. So I started hurting them back. Is that justice or revenge? Does it matter? They're dead either way. Elena shivered despite her robe. You scare me sometimes. Good. You should be scared. But other times, she trailed off. Other times what? Other times I think you're the safest person I know. Adrian was silent for a long time. Then, go to bed, Elena, before we both say something we can't take back. She obeyed, but sleep didn't come easy. Because somewhere between the auction and now, between fear and understanding, something had shifted. Elena was starting to see Adrian Romano not as her captor, but as someone just as trapped as she was. by his past, his choices, the weight of violence he carried. And worse, she was starting to care. The next week passed in a strange haze. Adrian traveled for business, 3 days in Barcelona, then 2 in Prague. He called once, ostensibly to check on the fortress, but Elena heard something else in his voice, checking on her. "Everything's fine," she told him. "Maria's feeding me too much. I'm running out of wall space for paintings." "Buy more walls." There was almost humor in his tone. "I'll be back Friday." "I didn't ask." "I know. I'm telling you anyway." When Friday came, Elena found herself watching the driveway. She told herself it was just curiosity, just wanting to know when he'd be home so she could avoid him. But when the car pulled up and Adrian climbed out, something in her chest unclenched. He looked tired. His suit was rumpled, shadows under his eyes. But when he saw her in the window, he smiled. A real smile. Small, but genuine. Elena stepped back from the glass, heart pounding. This was bad. This was very bad. Because she was starting to feel something she absolutely could not afford to feel. That night, there was a knock on her door near midnight. Elena opened it to find Adrian standing there, still in his travel clothes, looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen. "I'm sorry. I know it's late, but He held up a small package. "I brought you something." Elena took the package, curious. Inside was a set of paintbrushes. Professional grade, Italian made, the kind that cost hundreds of euros. "I saw them in Barcelona. Thought of you." "Adrian?" Elena looked up at him. "Why?" "Because you deserve good tools. Because He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. "Because I wanted to." They stood there in her doorway, something unspoken stretching between them. "Do you want to come in?" Elena asked before she could stop herself. Adrian's eyes darkened. "That's not a good idea." "Why not?" "Because if I come in, I might not leave." His voice was rough. "And we both know that would be a mistake." "Would it?" "Elena." Her name was a warning. "Don't." "Don't what? Don't ask questions? Don't start caring?" She stepped closer. "It's too late for that." "It can't be." But he didn't move away. "This isn't real. We're not real." "Then why did you bring me paintbrushes from Barcelona?" "Because I'm an idiot who can't leave well enough alone." "Or because you feel it too." Adrian's hand came up, cupping her face with surprising gentleness. "If I let myself feel what I'm feeling, it'll destroy us both. What if it doesn't? What if it saves us?" "You don't understand. I'm not capable of—" Elena kissed him. She didn't know where the courage came from, only that one moment she was standing there arguing and the next her lips were on his, her hands fisted in his shirt, every logical thought burning away. For a heartbeat, Adrian froze. Then he kissed her back. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, hungry, months of tension breaking like a dam. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer. She gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, backing her against the doorframe. "Elena," he breathed against her lips. "We can't. Stop talking." She kissed him again, and this time he didn't hesitate. His hands mapped her body through her robe, learning curves, staking claims. Elena's world narrowed to sensation, his mouth, his touch, the hard planes of his body against hers. Adrian pulled back suddenly, breathing hard, his forehead pressed to hers. "If we do this," he said raggedly, "everything changes. Everything already changed. You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me." Something in Adrian's expression cracked, control giving way to want. He lifted her easily, carrying her into the room, kicking the door shut behind them. The night dissolved into heat and discovery, into Elena learning that Adrian was capable of tenderness she'd never imagined, into Adrian discovering that Elena was stronger than either of them knew. When it was over, they lay tangled in her sheets, the fortress quiet around them, the ocean singing its endless song. Adrian's fingers traced lazy patterns on her shoulder. This was a mistake. Probably. I don't regret it. Neither do I. He pressed a kiss to her temple. "You terrify me, you know that?" Elena turned to face him, seeing vulnerability in those gray eyes for the first time. "Why?" "Because you make me want to be better, and I don't know if I can be." What if you already are? Adrian's laugh was bitter. I bought you, Elena, paid 2 million euros to own you. Nothing I do erases that. No, but everything you've done since complicates it. She touched his face. You're not the monster you think you are. I'm exactly the monster I think I am. I just hide it better around you. Or maybe I bring out something different. He pulled her closer, holding her like she might disappear. I don't know what we're doing. Neither do I, but I don't want to stop. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, two people who shouldn't fit but somehow did. When Elena woke at dawn, Adrian was gone, but on her nightstand sat the paintbrushes, and a note in his angular handwriting, I meant what I said. You terrify me, but I'm done pretending I don't want this. Elena held the note, her heart racing, knowing that everything had just irrevocably changed. For better or worse, she'd fallen for her captor, and he'd fallen right back. The days that followed felt like living in a dream that could shatter at any moment. Elena woke each morning reaching for Adrian, only to find his side of the bed empty but still warm. He'd slip out before dawn, leaving notes that made her heart ache, small confessions scratched in his angular handwriting, admissions he couldn't seem to say out loud. You looked peaceful sleeping. I didn't want to wake you, or simply, tonight. And every night he came to her. They didn't talk about what they were doing, didn't define the shift between them. It existed in stolen hours and quiet conversations, in the way Adrian's hand would find hers across the dinner table, in how Elena started painting him without realizing, his profile in a dozen different lights, trying to capture the contradiction of violence and tenderness in one man. Maria noticed, of course. The housekeeper said nothing, but her knowing smile suggested she approved. It was a week after that first night when Elena found Adrian in his study, surrounded by documents, looking more troubled than she'd seen him since the auction. What's wrong? She settled into the chair across from his desk. Adrian glanced up, and for a moment she saw genuine fear in his eyes. There's a situation in Marseille. What kind of situation? He hesitated, clearly debating how much to tell her. Then he pushed a folder across the desk. A rival syndicate. They've been moving into territory I control. We've maintained an uneasy truce for years, but something's changed. Elena opened the folder. Surveillance photos, documents in French, maps marked with territories. And at the center, a photo of a man, older, silver-haired, with cold eyes that reminded her of the auction. Who is this? Viktor Kozlov, Russian, ruthless. Adrian's voice was tight. He's been asking questions about you. Elena's blood ran cold. What kind of questions? Where you came from, how much I paid, whether the marriage is real. Adrian stood, pacing to the window. He's testing me, looking for weaknesses. And I'm a weakness. You're everything. The admission came out raw, and he knows it, which makes you a target. Elena set down the folder, her hands shaking. What does he want? Leverage. If he can take you, he can control me. Force concessions, take territory, maybe even Adrian's fist clenched against the glass. I won't let that happen. So what do we do? He turned, surprise flickering in his eyes. We? You think I'm just going to hide while you handle this alone? Elena stood, crossing to him. I'm in this now, Adrian, whatever this is. Something in his expression cracked, gratitude mixed with anguish. You don't understand what you're offering. This isn't just danger, it's war. Then teach me how to survive it. Adrian pulled her close, his arms tight around her. I can't lose you. I've lost too much already. You won't. Elena tilted her face up. We'll figure this out together. He kissed her then, desperate and claiming, like he was trying to memorize her through touch alone. When they finally broke apart, Adrian's expression had shifted into something harder. Business. There's a meeting, tomorrow night, neutral territory in Monaco. Victor wants to negotiate. The word dripped with skepticism. I have to go. Then I'm going with you. Absolutely not. Adrian, no. His voice was iron. These people are animals. I won't bring you into that. I've already been in that. Remember? Elena's voice was sharp. I was property once. I refused to be kept in the dark about threats to my life. They stared at each other, wills clashing. Finally, Adrian's shoulders sagged. You stay by my side. You don't speak unless I tell you to. And if things go wrong, you run. Understand? Things won't go wrong. Promise me, Elena. If I tell you to run, you run. She saw the fear beneath his command, the terror of losing someone else he cared about. I promise. Adrian pulled her close again, his face buried in her hair. I never wanted this for you, this life, this danger. I know, but I'm here anyway. She pressed a kiss to his jaw. We'll face it together. The next evening, Elena dressed for war. The gown Adrian provided was black silk, elegant but severe, with long sleeves and a high neck, armor disguised as fashion. She wore her hair up, minimal jewelry, just her wedding ring and diamond earrings that probably cost more than her university education. When she descended the stairs, Adrian was waiting in a perfectly tailored suit, looking every inch the crime lord he was. But when he saw her, his expression softened. You look like a queen. I feel like I'm going to my execution. You're not. I promise you that. He offered his arm. Stay close to me, no matter what happens. The drive to Monaco was tense. Adrian made several calls in Russian, his voice clipped and controlled. Elena caught enough to understand he was positioning people, setting contingencies, preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. The meeting was held in a private room at an exclusive casino, neutral ground, heavily surveilled, too public for outright violence. Theoretically, Viktor Kozlov was already there when they arrived, flanked by two men who looked like they ate nails for breakfast. He stood when Elena and Adrian entered, his smile cold and calculating. Romano, so good of you to accept my invitation. His English was heavily accented but precise. And you brought your lovely wife. How trusting. Victor. Adrian's hand pressed firmly against Elena's back, keeping her close. Let's skip the pleasantries. What do you want? Direct. I appreciate that. Victor gestured to the chairs. Please sit. We have much to discuss. They sat, Adrian positioning himself between Elena and Victor. Under the table, his hand found hers, squeezing once. Reassurance or warning, Elena couldn't tell. I'll be frank, Victor began, pouring vodka for himself. Your operations in southern France are inconvenient. They limit my expansion opportunities. That's the point. Yes, well, I'm proposing a new arrangement. You cede the Marseille ports. I take over operations there. In exchange, I leave your other territories untouched. Adrian's laugh was humorless. You want me to give you my most profitable operation out of the goodness of my heart? Out of necessity. I have information you might find uncomfortable. Victor's eyes slid to Elena. About your wife. Elena felt Adrian tense beside her. What information? His voice was deadly quiet. That your marriage is a sham. That you bought her at auction like property. That she's not your wife at all, just another acquisition. Victor leaned forward. How do you think that would play with your legitimate business partners? Your political connections? What happens when the world knows Adrian Romano traffics women? I saved her from trafficking. Did you? Or did you just claim her for yourself? Victor's smile widened. The distinction might not matter to prosecutors, or to your enemies. Elena felt the room tilt. This was it. The leverage Victor needed. The truth that could destroy everything Adrian had built. You're bluffing, Adrian said, but Elena heard the uncertainty beneath his words. Am I? Victor pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. I have photos from the auction, video, documentation of the sale, all ready to be distributed to media outlets, law enforcement, business partners. Unless, of course, we reach an agreement. Adrian stared at the tablet, his jaw working. Elena squeezed his hand, trying to offer support she wasn't sure she had. Give me the Marseille ports, Victor continued, and this all disappears. Keep fighting me, and I burn your empire to the ground, along with your reputation, your freedom, and her safety. The threat hung in the air like poison. Adrian was silent for a long moment. Then he stood, pulling Elena up with him. No. Victor blinked. I'm sorry? I said no. You can release whatever you want. Do your worst. Adrian's voice was steel, but I'm not giving you anything. You're willing to risk everything? Your business? Your freedom? Victor's eyes narrowed. Her life? Her life is not yours to threaten. Adrian's hand moved to Elena's waist, protective and possessive. And my empire was built on worse secrets than this. You think exposing one auction will destroy me? I've survived worse. You're bluffing. Try me. Adrian leaned forward, his voice dropping to something dangerous. But know this, Victor, the moment you move against her, you declare war. And I've been fighting wars since I was 8 years old. You won't win this one. Victor studied them both, clearly recalculating. You care about her. Actually care. I didn't think you were capable. Neither did I. Turns out I was wrong. Adrian straightened. We're done here. Release your information or don't. I don't particularly care. But stay away from my wife, or I'll show you exactly how ruthless I can be. He guided Elena toward the door, his hand steady despite the bomb Victor had just dropped. Romano! Victor's voice stopped them. You're making a mistake. Probably, but it's my mistake to make. They left Victor sitting alone in the private room, his threats and evidence meaningless against Adrian's refusal to bend. In the car, Elena finally found her voice. That was insane. He could destroy everything. Let him try. Adrian's jaw was tight, but his hand was gentle as it covered hers. I meant what I said. I won't trade you for anything. Not territory, not reputation, not safety. Adrian, you can't just... I can. I did. He turned to face her. You think I care what the world knows about us? About how we started? The only thing that matters is what we are now. And what are we? His eyes searched hers. I don't have a word for it yet, but it's real. It's the most real thing in my life. Elena's throat tightened. You're willing to risk everything for that? For you? Yes. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. I'd burn it all down before I let anyone hurt you. The car pulled through the fortress gates just as the first drops of rain began to fall. Inside, Adrian led her straight to his study, pouring them both whiskey with shaking hands. This is bad, he said, more to himself than to her. Victor's not the type to back down. He'll escalate. How? I don't know, but he will. Adrian drained his glass. I need to move some assets, secure certain operations, make sure that if he does release that information, the damage is minimal. What can I do? He looked at her like she'd offered him the world. Stay alive. Stay here. Let me protect you. I'm not hiding while you fight this alone. Elena, no. She crossed to him, taking the glass from his hand. You said we're real. That means we face this together. Adrian pulled her against him, his forehead resting on hers. I don't know how to do this, how to care about someone and keep them safe in this world. Then we'll figure it out as we go. They stood there holding each other, rain hammering against the windows, both knowing that Victor's threat was just the beginning. That night, neither of them slept. They lay in Elena's bed, talking in whispers about contingencies and worst-case scenarios. Adrian explained his operations in detail, what was legitimate, what wasn't, where the vulnerabilities lay. Elena listened, absorbing the reality of the man she'd fallen for. I've killed people, Adrian said into the darkness. More than I can count. Does that change how you see me? Elena was quiet for a moment. Were they innocent? No. They were men who hurt others, traffickers, abusers, competitors who thought violence was the only language. Then no, it doesn't change anything. She turned to face him. You're not a good man, Adrian, but you're not purely evil either. You're just you. That's not very romantic. I'm not interested in romance. I'm interested in truth. His kiss was soft, reverent. How did I get this lucky? You paid 2 million euros. Best investment I ever made. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were memorizing each other in case the world fell apart tomorrow. When dawn came, Adrian was still there. He held her as light crept across the room, his fingers tracing patterns on her skin. I need to tell you something, he said quietly. Elena's stomach clenched. What? I've been looking for your father. She went rigid. What? I needed to know he was still alive, for your sake. Adrian's voice was careful. I found him. He's in a facility outside Rome. Addiction treatment. He's safe. Elena didn't know what to feel. Rage, relief, grief, all of it tangled together. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know if you wanted to know. If you'd forgiven him enough to care. I haven't forgiven him. Her voice cracked. But he's still my father. I know. That's why I kept him safe, even after what he did. Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple. If you want to see him, I can arrange it. If you don't, that's fine too. Elena turned in his arms, studying his face. You did that for me? I'd do anything for you. Haven't you figured that out yet? She kissed him instead of answering, pouring everything she couldn't say into the touch. Later that morning, Victor's move came. Adrian was in a video call with his lawyers when Maria knocked urgently. Mr. Romano, you need to see this. She handed him a tablet showing a news website. The headline made Elena's blood freeze. Billionaire businessman Adrian Romano linked to human trafficking ring. Below it, photos from the auction. Blurred faces, but Elena clearly visible in her champagne gown, standing on the stage, and Adrian in the shadows, his paddle raised. That bastard, Adrian breathed. He actually did it. What do we do? Elena whispered. Adrian was already on his phone, barking orders. Get Marcus. Tell him to activate Protocol 7. I want our PR team spinning this in the next hour. And get me the prosecutor in Nice. I don't care if it's Sunday. Wake him up. He ended the call, turning to Elena with surprising calm. Pack a bag. We're leaving. Where? Switzerland. I have a property there. Secure. Isolated. We'll ride this out until I can control the narrative. Adrian, if we run, it looks like we're guilty. We are guilty. Of exactly what they're saying. His hands gripped her shoulders. But I can spin this. Make it about saving you, not buying you. Position myself as someone who intervened in trafficking, not participated. But I need time, and I need you safe. Elena nodded, her mind racing. How long? A week, maybe 2. Long enough for the initial storm to pass. She went to pack, her hands shaking as she threw clothes into a bag. This was really happening. The secret she'd been living with, now exposed to the world. In the hallway, she heard Adrian on the phone again, his voice sharp with authority. I don't care what it costs. Buy the story. Bury it. Make it disappear. But some things, Elena knew, couldn't be buried. They were loading into the car when the gates exploded. The blast threw Elena backward, her ears ringing, vision blurred. Through the smoke, she saw figures pouring through the breach, armed men moving with military precision. Elena! Adrian was there, pulling her up, shoving her toward the house. Inside! Now! Gunfire erupted. Adrian returned fire with a weapon Elena hadn't known he was carrying, his shots controlled and lethal. 2 attackers went down, then 3. But there were too many. The panic room, Adrian shouted to Maria, who'd appeared in the doorway. Take her! I'm not leaving you. You promised. His eyes found hers, desperate and fierce. You promised you'd run. More gunfire. The wall beside Elena's head exploded in splinters. Adrian fired again, backing toward the house, covering their retreat. Go! Maria grabbed Elena's arm, pulling her inside. Elena fought, screaming Adrian's name, but the older woman was surprisingly strong. They ran through corridors Elena barely recognized, downstairs she didn't know existed, into a steel-reinforced room hidden beneath the fortress. He'll be fine, Maria said, sealing the door. He survived worse. But through the security monitors, Elena watched the battle unfold. Watched Adrian fighting alone against impossible odds, protecting the fortress, protecting her, protecting everything they'd built in stolen moments and fragile trust. One of the attackers got close. Too close. Adrian went down, and Elena's scream was soundless in the sealed room. Then Adrian was up again, moving like violence incarnate, taking down 3 men with brutal efficiency. But Elena saw what he didn't. Another figure approaching from behind, weapon raised. No! She pounded on the door, useless, helpless. Adrian, behind you! He couldn't hear her. The attacker fired. Adrian stumbled, clutching his side, blood blooming across his white shirt. Elena's world stopped. Adrian turned, raising his own weapon, and the attacker fell. But Adrian was swaying now, his movement slower. He took down 2 more attackers, then fell to one knee. Through the monitors, Elena saw him look directly at the security camera, directly at her. His lips moved. Even without sound, she knew what he was saying. "I'm sorry." Then he collapsed. The attackers retreated as sirens approached. Adrian's security team, finally arriving. But they were too late. The damage was done. Elena hammered on the door, screaming for Maria to open it, to let her out, to let her reach him. Finally, the older woman complied. Elena ran through smoke and debris, her dress torn, her hands bleeding from broken glass. She found Adrian in the courtyard, surrounded by bodies, barely conscious. "Adrian!" She fell to her knees beside him, pressing her hands to the wound in his side. Blood seeped through her fingers, hot and terrifying. "Stay with me. Please, stay with me." His eyes fluttered open, focusing on her with difficulty. "You're safe?" "I'm fine. You're the one bleeding." Tears streamed down her face. "Why didn't you run? Why didn't you save yourself?" "Had to protect you." His hand found hers, weak but determined. "Worth it." "You're an idiot." "You're idiot." He coughed, blood flecking his lips. "Elena, if I don't—" "Stop. Don't you dare." She leaned close, her forehead touching his. "You don't get to die on me. Not after everything. You hear me? You don't get to leave." Adrian's smile was faint but real. "Bossy." "Damn right I am. Now shut up and conserve your strength." The medics arrived, pulling Elena away as they worked on Adrian. She watched them load him into an ambulance, her hands still covered in his blood, her heart in her throat. One of Adrian's lieutenants, a man named Marcus she'd met once, appeared at her side. "Mrs. Romano, we need to move you to a secure location." "I'm going with him." "Ma'am, I'm going with him." Elena's voice was iron. "Try to stop me and I'll shoot you myself." Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. "This way." They followed the ambulance to a private hospital, one that asked no questions about gunshot wounds. Elena sat in the waiting room, still in her torn dress, still covered in blood, while surgeons worked to save the man she'd somehow fallen in love with. Hours passed. Dawn came. Elena didn't move. Finally, a doctor emerged. "Mrs. Romano?" Elena stood on shaking legs. "Is he alive?" "Yes. The bullet missed major organs, but he's lost a lot of blood. We've stabilized him, but the next 24 hours are critical." "Can I see him?" The doctor hesitated. "He's not conscious, but yes. Follow me." Adrian looked smaller in the hospital bed, pale and vulnerable in a way she'd never seen him. Machines beeped around him, monitoring vitals, keeping him alive. Elena pulled a chair close, taking his hand carefully. "You're an idiot," she whispered again. "But you're my idiot. So you have to wake up. You have to be okay." She pressed a kiss to his knuckles, his blood still under her fingernails. "I love you, you stupid, complicated, impossible man. And I need you to wake up so I can tell you that when you can actually hear me." The machines beeped. Adrian slept. And Elena held his hand, refusing to let go, knowing that everything had changed. Victor had made his move. The world knew their secret. Adrian had been shot protecting her, but she was still here, still standing, still fighting. Because somewhere between captivity and freedom, between fear and trust, Elena Vieri had become someone new, someone who didn't break, someone who loved a monster and saw a man, someone who would burn the world down before she let anyone take him from her. She held Adrian's hand tighter, making a silent vow. They'd started this as captor and captive, but when he woke up, and he would wake up, she refused to believe otherwise, they'd face whatever came next as equals, as partners, as something that had no name but felt like salvation. Adrian woke on the third day. Elena had barely left his side, surviving on coffee and sheer stubborn will, ignoring Marcus's gentle suggestions that she rest. She was there when Adrian's eyes finally opened, his hand still wrapped in hers. "Elena?" His voice was rough, barely a whisper. She leaned forward, tears streaming down her face. "Hey, welcome back. You're still here. Where else would I be?" Adrian's fingers tightened weakly around hers. "Safe. Away from this mess." "He's too late for that." She brushed hair from his forehead, her touch gentle. "Besides, someone had to make sure you didn't die. You're terrible at following doctor's orders. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. Bossy. You said that already, before you passed out. Elena's voice cracked. Don't do that again. Don't almost die on me. I'll try. He struggled to sit up, wincing at the pain. Victor? Gone. Your men tracked the attackers back to a warehouse in Marseille, but Victor had already disappeared. Marcus had briefed her on everything, treating her like she had a right to know, like she was actually Adrian's partner. But there's more. Tell me. Elena took a breath. The news story went viral. Every major outlet picked it up. Photos from the auction are everywhere. The authorities in 3 countries have opened investigations. Adrian closed his eyes. How bad? Bad enough that your lawyers have been working around the clock. Good enough that your PR team is actually managing to spin it. She squeezed his hand. They're positioning you as someone who infiltrated the auction to rescue victims. A vigilante, not a participant. That's not what happened. I know, but it's the story that might save you. Elena hesitated. They want me to do an interview, tell my side of things. Say you saved me. Adrian's eyes snapped open. No, absolutely not. I won't let you lie for me. It wouldn't be entirely a lie. She met his gaze steadily. You did save me. Just not the way they think. Elena, you saved me from worse monsters than yourself. You gave me a home when I had nothing. You protected me when Victor came after us. Her voice was fierce. So maybe it didn't start as a rescue, but somewhere along the way it became one. Adrian stared at her like she was something miraculous and terrifying. You don't have to do this. I want to. Let me help you the way you've helped me. Before he could respond, the doctor entered to check his vitals, followed by Marcus with urgent news. We have a problem, Marcus said, then noticed Adrian was awake. Sir, good to see you conscious. What's the problem? Adrian asked, already shifting into business mode despite his obvious pain. Victor's made contact. He wants to meet, says he has information about the attack. Adrian's expression hardened. It's a trap. Probably. But he says if you don't meet him, he'll release more evidence. Videos from inside your operations, financial records, everything. Let him. I'm done negotiating with terrorists. There's more. Marcus glanced at Elena, clearly uncomfortable. He claims he has information about Mrs. Romano's father, about who really sold her. Elena went cold. What does that mean? Adrian's hand found hers. It means Victor is fishing, trying to create doubt between us. Or, Marcus said carefully, he knows something we don't. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like poison. Set up the meeting, Adrian said finally. But not until I'm out of this bed. And double our security. Marcus nodded and left. Elena remained frozen, her mind racing. My father sold me to pay his debts, she said slowly. That's what they told me. That's what I was told too. Adrian struggled to sit up further, his face tight with pain. But I never verified it directly. I paid the debts, took you from the auction, assumed the rest was true. You're saying it might not be? I'm saying Victor is many things, but he's not usually a liar. If he claims to have information, Adrian trailed off. We need to find out what he knows. Elena's world tilted again. Everything she'd believed about that night, about why she'd been taken, suddenly felt uncertain. I want to see my father, she said abruptly. Adrian looked at her. Are you sure? No, but I need answers, real ones. She stood, pacing the small hospital room. If there's more to this story, if someone else was involved, I deserve to know. Then we'll find out. Together. Adrian held out his hand. But first, I need to get out of this place. I can't protect you from a hospital bed. The doctors protested, but Adrian Romano was not a man who took no for an answer. 24 hours later, he was back at the fortress, or what remained of it. The attack had left scars, bullet holes in the walls, scorched stone from the gate explosion, windows still being replaced. But it was home, and home meant safety, however temporary. Adrian set up operations from his study, conducting business from a leather chair with Elena hovering nearby, ignoring her concerned looks. His wound was healing, but she could see the pain in the tight set of his shoulders, the occasional grimace when he moved wrong. You should be resting, she said for the 100th time. I'll rest when Victor is dealt with. Adrian signed a document Marcus handed him. Schedule the meeting for Friday, the same place as last time, neutral ground. You're not going alone, Elena said. We've discussed this. No, you've dictated and I've ignored you. I'm coming. She crossed her arms. He has information about my father. About me. I have a right to hear it. Adrian studied her for a long moment. You've changed. What do you mean? The woman I bought wouldn't have argued with me. She was terrified, broken. Now you're... He searched for words. Strong, fearless. You stand up to me like an equal. I am your equal. Yes. His smile was soft, genuine. You are. I just didn't expect it. What did you expect? Someone who stayed afraid. Someone I could protect by keeping at a distance. Adrian stood, crossing to her despite his obvious discomfort. Instead, you became someone who protects me right back. Elena touched his face, careful of the bruises still fading. We protect each other. That's how this works. He kissed her, tender and claiming, until Marcus cleared his throat from the doorway. Sorry to interrupt, but we have another situation. Adrian pulled back with a sigh. What now? The Foundation. Doctor, Rousseau called. They're being investigated. Questions about funding sources. Connections to organized crime. Marcus's expression was grim. They're threatening to shut it down. No. Adrian's voice went hard. Those women depend on that place. I won't let it close because of me. The connection is obvious, sir. Your donations fund most of their operations. With the current scandal, then we find other donors, clean money, legitimate sources. Adrian was already reaching for his phone. I'll call every business contact I have. Someone will help. Elena watched him work, making calls, leveraging favors, calling in debts, all to protect a foundation that helped women like the one his mother had been, like she could have been. It was in moments like this that she understood the full complexity of the man she loved, capable of terrible violence, yes, but also capable of tremendous good. The interview was scheduled for Wednesday. A major news network, sympathetic to their narrative, willing to let Elena tell her story. Adrian's PR team prepped her for hours, coaching her on what to say, how to frame it, which details to emphasize and which to omit. Remember, the lead publicist said, you're a victim who was saved, not a woman who was bought. Adrian interrupted a trafficking operation and removed you from danger. The marriage came later, after you'd recovered, after you'd fallen in love naturally. Elena nodded, hating every word of the lie, but hating more what the truth would do to Adrian. The night before the interview, she couldn't sleep. She found Adrian on his balcony, staring at the dark ocean, a glass of whiskey in his hand. Nervous? He asked without turning. Terrified. She joined him at the railing. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing? Then we deal with it, together. Adrian set down his glass, pulling her close. But you won't mess up. You're stronger than you think. I'm about to lie on national television to protect a man who bought me at an auction. Elena's laugh was bitter. My literature professors would have a field day with the moral complexity. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. There is no other way, not one that keeps you out of prison. She turned to face him. I meant what I said before. You saved me. Maybe not that first night, but every day since. This is me returning the favor. Adrian's hand cupped her face. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. They made love that night with desperate intensity, like they were trying to memorize each other in case everything fell apart tomorrow. The interview aired live at 8 p.m. Elena sat across from a journalist known for sympathetic coverage, the studio lights hot and blinding. Somewhere off camera, Adrian's team monitored every word, ready to do damage control if needed. So, Elena, the journalist began, her voice warm and concerned, tell us what happened the night you met Adrian Romano. Elena took a breath and launched into the carefully crafted story. She talked about being kidnapped by traffickers, about the terror of waking in an unfamiliar place. She described the auction in vague terms, enough to establish danger, not enough to implicate herself or Adrian in the full truth. Adrian was there investigating, she said, the lie smooth on her tongue now. He'd been tracking this trafficking ring for months. When he saw me on that stage, he knew the only way to save me was to outbid everyone else. So he did. That must have been terrifying. It was. I didn't know who he was or what he wanted. I thought... Elena let her voice break, genuine emotion flooding through. I thought I was going to die. But Adrian protected you. Yes. He took me to his home, kept me safe while he worked to bring down the trafficking operation. He didn't have to do any of that. He could have just walked away. But he didn't. The journalist leaned forward. When did you realize you were falling in love with him? Elena thought about the real answer, gradually, in stolen moments and careful kindness, in the way he'd built her a studio and protected women like his mother and looked at her like she was something precious. I think it was when I saw him reading Dante, she said, allowing truth to color the lie. This powerful, dangerous man, sitting in his library with reading glasses on, making notes in the margins. He was so much more than I'd expected, more human, more complicated. And the marriage. We got married because we wanted to, because somewhere in all the chaos, we found something real. Elena met the camera directly, speaking to everyone watching, but really only talking to Adrian. He's not perfect. Neither am I. But we're perfect for each other. The interview continued for another 20 minutes. Questions about the foundation, about Victor's accusations, about what came next. Elena answered each one with practiced ease, selling the narrative that would save the man she loved. When it ended, the producer gave her a thumbs up. That was perfect. Exactly what we needed. Elena smiled and nodded and felt like she was going to be sick. She found Adrian in the waiting room, his expression unreadable. How was I? She asked. Convincing, too convincing. He pulled her into an embrace. I hated watching you lie for me. I wasn't lying about everything. The important parts were true. Which parts? That you saved me. That I love you. Elena pulled back to look at him. That we're perfect for each other, flaws and all. Adrian kissed her forehead. Let's go home. The interview changed everything. Public opinion shifted almost overnight. Social media exploded with support for Elena, praise for Adrian's heroism, outrage at the trafficking operation. The investigations quietly lost momentum as prosecutors faced pressure to focus on the real criminals, the people who'd run the auction, not the man who'd disrupted it. Within a week, Adrian's lawyers announced that no charges would be filed. The story, they said, was one of rescue, not complicity. Victor's leverage had turned to ash, but the meeting was still scheduled, because Victor had promised information about Elena's father, and that was leverage of a different kind. Friday arrived wrapped in fog. They drove to Monaco in silence, Elena's hand tight in Adrian's. He'd healed enough to move without obvious pain, but she could see the lingering stiffness, the way he favored his left side. If this goes wrong, she said as they pulled up to the casino, if Victor tries something, he won't. Not here. Too public. Too risky. Adrian's thumb brushed across her knuckles. But stay alert anyway. Trust your instincts. Victor was waiting in the same private room as before, looking smug and untouched by the scandal he'd tried to create. Romano, Mrs. Romano, so glad you could make it. He gestured to the chairs. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Cut the pleasantries, Adrian said, remaining standing. You said you have information about Elena's father. Let's hear it. Victor smiled, pulling out a folder. Of course. But first, I think we should renegotiate our earlier discussion. Given recent events, you must see that cooperation would benefit us both. The only thing I see is a man who attacked my home and nearly killed me. Give me one reason I shouldn't end you right here. Because, Victor said calmly, I know the truth about how Elena ended up at that auction, and I don't think you're going to like it. Elena stepped forward. Then tell us. Victor slid a document across the table. Your father didn't sell you, Mrs. Romano, at least not voluntarily. He was approached by a man named Dmitry Volkov, one of my associates, actually. Dmitry told your father that his debts would be forgiven if he delivered you to a specific location at a specific time. That's still selling me, Elena said, her voice shaking. But here's the interesting part. Your father refused, multiple times. He said he'd find another way to pay. Victor's smile widened. So Dmitry had him beaten, badly. Put him in the hospital. Told him if he didn't cooperate, you'd be taken anyway and he'd be killed. Your father agreed to protect you, not profit from you. Elena felt the room tilt. You're lying. I wish I were, but I have medical records, witness statements, even recordings of the conversations. Victor pushed the folder toward her. Your father sacrificed himself to keep you alive, and Romano here swooped in and took you anyway. Adrian grabbed the folder, scanning the contents, his expression darkening with each page. This is real, he said quietly. Of course it's real. I don't traffic in lies. Victor leaned back. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Elena snatched the folder, reading through tear-blurred vision. Hospital reports showing her father with broken ribs, a fractured jaw, internal bleeding. Statements from neighbors who'd seen the attack. And buried in the paperwork, a note in her father's handwriting. Forgive me, Elena. I had no choice. Why? Elena's voice broke. Why would you do this to him? To me? Because your father saw something he shouldn't have. A meeting between some very important people. We needed leverage to ensure his silence. Victor shrugged. You were that leverage. The auction was just convenient disposal after we'd extracted what we needed. Adrian's fist slammed into the table. You used her as collateral for your dirty secrets? I used her as insurance. There's a difference. Victor stood. Now, here's my offer. I have more evidence. Evidence that could exonerate your father-in-law, expose my organization's trafficking operations, maybe even help your foundation. In exchange, I want the Marseille ports and your word you won't retaliate for the attack on your fortress. You're insane if you think I'd deal with you after this. Am I? Or am I offering you a chance to give your wife something she actually wants? Her father's freedom? His redemption? Victor's eyes glittered. Think about it, Romano. What's worth more? Territory you can replace, or her happiness? Elena looked at Adrian, seeing the conflict in his expression. This was exactly the kind of impossible choice he'd been trying to protect her from. Don't, she said. Don't give him anything for me. Elena, I mean it. My father made his choices. He's dealing with the consequences. You don't trade your empire for that. Victor laughed. How noble. But I wonder how long that nobility will last when you visit dear old Dad and see what my people did to him. Get out, Adrian said quietly. I'm sorry? Get out. Before I forget we're in public and kill you where you stand. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. You want Marseille? You want my cooperation? You want anything from me? The answer is no, now and forever. You're making a mistake. I'm making a choice. There's a difference. Adrian took Elena's hand. And I choose her, always her, over territory, over peace, over everything. They left Victor sitting alone, his leverage meaningless, his threats empty. In the car, Elena finally let herself break. She sobbed against Adrian's chest while he held her, stroking her hair, whispering reassurances she couldn't quite hear through the grief and rage. I need to see him, she said finally. My father. I need to know if it's true. Then we'll go. Tomorrow, if you want. Adrian tilted her face up. Whatever you need, Elena. I mean that. What I need is for none of this to have happened. For my father not to have been beaten, for me not to have been sold, for you not to have... She stopped herself. Not to have what? Bought you? Adrian's voice was gentle. I did, Elena. I can't change that, but I can try to make it right. How? By finding Dmitry Volkov. By making him pay for what he did to your father. By exposing Victor's entire operation. Adrian's eyes hardened. And by giving you the choice I never gave you before. What choice? Whether you want to stay. With me, in this life, with all its complications. He cupped her face in both hands. I love you, Elena. I think I've loved you since the night you stood on your balcony and refused to let me keep my distance. But love shouldn't be a cage. If you want to leave, if you want your freedom, really leave, really be free, I'll let you go. Elena stared at him, this impossible man offering the impossible gift. You'd actually let me walk away? If it's what you want? Yes. Adrian's voice broke slightly. I'd hate it. It would destroy me. But I'd do it because you deserve the choice. And what about your enemies? What about Victor using me as leverage? I'll handle it. I'll make sure you're protected, wherever you go, whatever you choose. He pressed his forehead to hers. I'm done keeping you out of obligation or fear or necessity. If you stay, it has to be because you want to, because you choose this. Choose me. Elena felt tears streaming down her face again, but this time they weren't from grief. You really have changed, she whispered. You changed me. She kissed him then, pouring everything into it, her fear and her love, her rage and her hope, her certainty that despite everything, despite the terrible beginning and the complicated present, this was exactly where she wanted to be. I choose you, she said against his lips. I choose this life, this home, this impossible, violent, beautiful thing we've built together. I choose us. Adrian's arms tightened around her. Even knowing the truth? Knowing your father tried to save you and I took you anyway? Especially knowing that, because you didn't know. And when you found out, you offered me the one thing you've never offered anyone else: freedom. She pulled back to look at him. That's not the action of a monster, Adrian. That's love. They held each other as the car wound through mountain roads, both knowing that tomorrow would bring more complications, more battles, more impossible choices. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And that was enough. The next morning, they flew to Rome. The facility where Elena's father was recovering was modest but clean, specializing in addiction treatment and trauma recovery. Adrian had been funding his care for months, Elena learned, keeping him safe, keeping him alive, all while never mentioning it. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She asked as they walked up to the entrance. Because I didn't know if you'd forgiven him enough to care, and I didn't want to pressure you either way. Adrian squeezed her hand. Your relationship with your father is yours to define. I just wanted to make sure he stayed alive long enough for you to make that choice. A nurse led them to a common room where several patients sat reading or watching television. In the corner, a thin man with graying hair looked up at their approach. Elena's breath caught. Her father looked older, frailer than she remembered. The beating had left scars, a crooked nose, a slight limp as he stood. But his eyes were clear, sober for perhaps the first time in years. Elena? His voice cracked. Is it really you? She wanted to run, to scream, to demand answers. Instead, she walked forward slowly. Hello, Papa. I didn't think I'd ever see you again. Tears spilled down his weathered face. I thought you'd hate me too much to ever... I did hate you. I do hate you. Elena's voice shook. But I also need to understand. Victor told me what really happened, what they did to you. Is it true? Her father sank back into his chair, suddenly looking ancient. All of it. They came to me with photos, Elena. Photos of you at university, at your apartment, walking home alone at night. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd take you anyway and I'd watch you die. His hands trembled. I tried to refuse, I swear I did. But then they beat me, and I realized they'd do it. They'd take you whether I helped or not. So you chose to hand me over yourself. I chose to make sure they didn't hurt you in the process. I made them promise. No violence, no drugs, just a clean transfer. He looked up at her. I know that doesn't make it better. I know I'm still the man who gambled away everything, who put you in danger with my stupidity. But I never wanted to sell you, Elena. Never. Adrian stood quietly beside her, his presence supportive but not intrusive. This moment was hers. You should have told me, Elena said, about the debts, the danger. I could have helped. We could have run. Where would we run that they wouldn't find us? These men, they have reach everywhere. Her father's gaze shifted to Adrian. But he found you, kept you safe. For that, I'm grateful. Don't be grateful to me, Adrian said quietly. I'm part of that world, part of the system that hurt her. But you chose differently. You chose to protect her instead of use her. Her father stood again, moving closer. That takes a kind of strength I never had. Elena watched them, her father broken by choices and regret, and Adrian transformed by choices made differently. Two men shaped by the same violent world, taking opposite paths. I forgive you, she heard herself say. Her father's eyes widened. Elena, I don't forget. I probably never will. But I forgive you. She stepped forward, letting him embrace her for the first time in over a year. You did what you thought you had to do, just like I did, just like Adrian did. We all made choices. Some good, some terrible. But we're still here. Her father held her like she was made of glass, his whole body shaking with sobs. When they finally pulled apart, Adrian handed him a card. That's a direct line to me. If Victor's people come back, if anyone threatens you, you call. Immediately. Adrian's voice was firm. You're family now. That means something. Her father stared at the card, then at Adrian. Why would you do this for me? Because she loves you despite everything, and I love her. Adrian's hand found Elena's. Besides, we have a common enemy now. Victor thinks he can use your suffering as leverage. I intend to prove him wrong. They stayed another hour, talking carefully around old wounds, finding tentative new ground. When they finally left, Elena felt lighter despite the heaviness of everything they'd discussed. Thank you, she said to Adrian as they drove away, for taking care of him, for bringing me here. You don't need to thank me for doing the right thing. The Adrian I met months ago wouldn't have thought it was the right thing. He would have let my father rot as punishment. Elena studied his profile. You really have changed. We both have. Adrian glanced at her. The question is, what do we do now? Victor still has evidence that could hurt people. The trafficking operation still exists. Your father is still in danger as long as they think he knows too much. Then we end it, Elena said with sudden certainty. We expose Victor's entire operation. We burn it all down. Adrian's smile was dangerous and proud. That's my girl. They spent the flight back to Nice planning. Adrian made calls to law enforcement contacts who owed him favors, to journalists who specialized in investigative work, to rival syndicates who'd jump at the chance to take down Viktor Kozlov. Elena watched him orchestrate their revenge with the same precision he'd once used to run his empire. We'll need witnesses, Adrian said. Women from the Foundation who might have information about Victor's operations, financial records, shipping manifests. I can talk to Dr. Rousseau. Some of the women there came from Victor's trafficking ring. They might be willing to testify. It's dangerous. Victor will retaliate. Let him try. Elena's voice was steel. I'm done being afraid of men like him. Adrian looked at her with something like awe. When did you get so fierce? I learned from the best. Over the next 2 weeks, they built their case. Dr. Rousseau helped connect them with survivors willing to speak. Adrian's lawyers compiled financial evidence linking Victor to trafficking operations across 3 countries. Journalists dug into shipping records, finding patterns of young women being moved like cargo. And through it all, Elena worked alongside Adrian as a true partner, making calls, conducting interviews, piecing together the puzzle of Victor's empire. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dmitry Volkov, the man who'd beaten Elena's father, reached out through intermediaries. He wanted to make a deal. He's scared, Marcus reported. Victor's getting paranoid, eliminating people who know too much. Dmitry thinks he's next. So he wants witness protection in exchange for testimony, Adrian said. Classic. Do we take it? Elena asked. Normally, I'd say no. Men like Dmitry don't deserve second chances. Adrian looked at her. But this is your call. He's the one who hurt your father. Elena thought about her father's broken face, the scars that would never fully heal. Then she thought about all the other women Victor had hurt, all the families destroyed. We take the deal, she said, but only if he gives us everything. Names, locations, documentation, everything to bring down Victor's entire network. Dmitry agreed. The evidence he provided was damning. Ledgers showing thousands of women trafficked, correspondence with corrupt officials, even video evidence of Victor personally ordering executions. Adrian handed it all to law enforcement and the press simultaneously, ensuring it couldn't be buried. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Within hours, arrests were being made across Europe. Victor's operation collapsed like a house of cards. Lieutenants turning on each other, warehouses raided, women rescued from nightmare situations. Victor himself was arrested in Monaco, trying to flee on a private yacht. Elena watched the news coverage with Adrian beside her, his arm around her shoulders. It's over, she said, almost unable to believe it. This part is. There will be trials, investigations, fallout. Adrian pressed a kiss to her temple. But the worst is over. Victor can't hurt you anymore, can't hurt anyone. Because of what we did. Together. Yes, together. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their enemy fall. knowing they'd won not through violence but through truth. That night, Adrian found Elena in her studio. Their studio now, really. She spent as much time there as ever, but now he'd join her sometimes, reading while she painted. Their comfortable silence a kind of peace neither had known before. "I have something for you," he said, holding out a small box. Elena set down her brush, curious. Inside the box was a key. "What's this?" "The deed to this fortress is in both our names now, truly yours, not just because you're my wife, yours." Adrian's voice was soft. "And if you ever want to leave, you can. The gates aren't locked anymore. Haven't been for months." Elena stared at the key, understanding the gift for what it was. True freedom, true choice. "I'm not leaving," she said. "I know, but I needed you to know you could." She set the key aside and pulled him close, kissing him with all the love and certainty she'd found in the most unlikely place. "This is my home," she said against his lips. "You're my home. I'm exactly where I want to be." Adrian held her like she was precious, like she was everything. And in that moment, surrounded by her art and his love, Elena realized she was finally, truly free. Not because the gates were unlocked or because Victor was in prison or because her father was safe, but because she'd chosen this. Chosen him. Chosen a future built on truth instead of fear. The woman who'd been sold at auction had become the woman who'd torn down a criminal empire, and the man who'd bought her had become the man who'd set her free. Together, they'd transformed something dark and terrible into something real and true. And that, Elena thought as Adrian carried her to bed, was its own kind of miracle. Adrian woke to Elena's voice. Not her actual voice. She was asleep in the chair beside his bed, her head resting on her arms, dark hair spilling across the white hospital sheets. But he could have sworn he'd heard her calling him back from wherever he'd been drifting. Everything hurt. His side felt like it was on fire. His head pounded and breathing took more effort than it should. But he was alive. He turned his head slightly, wincing at the movement, and studied Elena's sleeping face. Even exhausted, even with shadows under her eyes and worry lines etched around her mouth, she was beautiful. She'd stayed. Despite everything, she'd stayed. Adrian tried to speak, but his throat was desert dry. He managed a sound somewhere between a cough and a groan. Elena's eyes flew open. "Adrian!" She was on her feet instantly, her hand finding his. "You're awake." "Oh, thank—" She caught herself, pressing her other hand to her mouth. "You scared me. You complete bastard. You scared me to death." "Sorry," he rasped. "Water?" She helped him drink, her movements gentle but efficient. When he'd had enough, she settled back into her chair, still gripping his hand like she was afraid he'd disappear. "How long?" Adrian asked. 2 days. You've been out for 2 days." Elena's voice cracked. "They said the bullet missed your organs, but you lost so much blood. There were complications, an infection. Adrian, I thought I'd lost you. Takes more than one bullet." He tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. "Victor?" Elena's expression hardened. "Marcus handled it. While you were unconscious, he made it very clear to Victor that attacking you was a declaration of war. Victor's operations in 3 cities were dismantled. His assets frozen, his people arrested." "Marcus did that?" "With help from your other associates. Apparently, threatening you threatened them all." She squeezed his hand. "You have more loyalty than you realize." Adrian processed that, surprised. He'd always operated alone, trusting no one completely. But apparently in building his empire, he'd built something else too. "The news story?" he asked. "Still out there. But your PR team did damage control. They're spinning it as you rescuing me from trafficking, not participating in it. There are investigations, but Marcus says your lawyers will handle it." Elena's thumb brushed across his knuckles. "It's not over, but it's manageable." "And you? Are you safe?" "I'm fine. The fortress is being repaired. Your security team has tripled the perimeter. Nothing's getting through those gates again." She leaned closer. "But I don't care about any of that. I only care that you're alive." Adrian saw something in her eyes then, something fierce and unbreakable. The girl who'd been terrified on that auction stage was gone. In her place was a woman who'd sat vigil for 2 days, who'd faced down attackers and media storms, who'd refused to leave his side. "I heard you," he said quietly. "While I was under, I heard you tell me to wake up." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I told you a lot of things. I don't know if you heard all of them. Tell me again, now that I can answer." She took a shaky breath. "I love you. I love you even though you're impossible and dangerous and you bought me like property. I love you because underneath all of that, you're the best man I know. And I need you to get better so we can figure out what the hell we're going to do with the rest of our lives." Adrian's chest tightened, not from pain, but from something he hadn't felt in decades. Hope. "I love you too," he said, the words foreign on his tongue, but absolutely true. "I didn't think I was capable of it. But then you came into my life and turned everything upside down." Is that a complaint? It's a miracle. He tried to sit up, winced, and Elena immediately moved to help him, adjusting pillows behind his back. "Elena, when I was lying there bleeding, all I could think was that I hadn't told you, that I'd die without you knowing that you're the only good thing in my life. Don't talk about dying. I have to, because there's something else I need to say." Adrian caught her hand, pulling her closer despite the pain it cost him. "I want out." Elena blinked. "Out of what?" "This life. The criminal empire, the violence, all of it." His voice was rough with conviction. "I've been building an exit strategy for years. Legitimate businesses, investments, legal operations. I just never had a reason to actually use it. Now I do." "Adrian, you can't just walk away from." "I can. It'll take time, careful transitions, making sure the right people take over the operations that can't be legitimized. But I can do it." His eyes held hers. "For you, I can do it. For us." Elena's tears spilled over. "You'd give up everything?" "Everything I built was just a way to survive. You're the first thing that's made me want to actually live." Adrian wiped her tears with his thumb. "I want a life with you. A real one. Not as captor and captive, not as crime lord and wife. Just as us." "What would that even look like?" "I don't know. We'll figure it out together." He smiled, and this time it was real. "Maybe I'll become a boring businessman. Maybe you'll open a gallery. Maybe we'll have a house by the ocean where no one tries to kill us." Elena laughed through her tears. "That sounds like a fantasy." "So did you loving me. But here we are." She kissed him then, careful of his injuries, pouring everything she felt into the touch. When they broke apart, Adrian saw his future in her eyes, complicated, uncertain, but absolutely worth fighting for. A knock interrupted them. Marcus entered, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "Mr. Romano, Mrs. Romano, sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation." Adrian tensed. "What kind of situation?" "Viktor Kozlov is dead." The words hung in the air like smoke. "How?" Adrian asked. "His own people. Apparently his attack on you violated agreements with other syndicates. They saw it as reckless, destabilizing." Marcus shifted his weight. "They handled it internally. Sent us his head as an apology." Elena paled. "They sent you his—" "Metaphorically," Marcus added quickly. "Well, mostly metaphorically. The point is, Victor's organization has collapsed. The threat is neutralized." Adrian absorbed this, feeling something close to relief. "And the investigations? The media attention?" "Your lawyers have been busy. They've positioned you as a vigilante who rescues trafficking victims. Unorthodox, possibly illegal, but not monstrous." Marcus allowed himself a small smile. "Public opinion is shifting in your favor, especially after several women from Dr. Rousseau's foundation came forward to testify that you saved their lives." Elena gripped Adrian's hand tighter. "So it's over?" "The immediate crisis, yes. There will still be legal battles, investigations, but nothing that can't be managed." Marcus looked at Adrian. "Sir, the syndicate heads are asking about succession. They want to know who's taking over your operations." "No one," Adrian said firmly. "I'm dissolving the criminal enterprises. Everything gets legitimized or shut down." Marcus's eyes widened. "Sir, you can't just—" "I can and I am. Work with my lawyers, transfer operations to trusted people who can run them legally or phase them out entirely. I want to be completely clean within 6 months." "That's ambitious." "It's necessary." Adrian's voice was steel. "Make it happen." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. As you wish. I'll start the process. When he left, Elena turned to Adrian with wonder in her eyes. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. He brought her hand to his lips. No more violence. No more criminal operations. Just a man trying to build something honest with the woman he loves. What about the fortress? We'll keep it. I've grown fond of the view. Adrian's smile was soft. But no more armed guards, no more panic rooms, just a home. Elena settled carefully onto the bed beside him, mindful of his injuries. I can't believe this is happening. 3 months ago, I was a literature student with no future. Now I'm married to a crime lord who's going legitimate. Former crime lord, Adrian corrected. And you always had a future. I just redirected it. You kidnapped it. Semantics. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Tell me about that future, the one you would have had. Elena was quiet for a moment, remembering. I wanted to teach, maybe, or work in a museum, paint in my free time, never make any money from it, live in a tiny apartment with too many cats. That sounds terrible. It was my dream. What's your dream now? She looked at him, this impossible man who'd bought her and saved her and loved her. This, you, whatever we build together. Even if it's messy and complicated? Especially if it's messy and complicated. Elena smiled. I've discovered I don't actually want simple. Adrian pulled her closer, and they lay there in comfortable silence, healing together. 3 weeks later, Adrian was released from the hospital. The fortress had been repaired, the gates reinforced, but as promised, the security was scaled back. No more armed guards on every corner, no more surveillance state, just enough protection to feel safe without feeling imprisoned. Elena had spent the weeks painting, working through trauma and joy in equal measure. The studio was filled with new pieces, vibrant and alive in ways her earlier work hadn't been. Adrian found her there on their first evening back, standing in front of a canvas that took his breath away. It was them. Not realistic, but impressionistic. 2 figures intertwined, one dark and one light, merged into something new. Where they overlapped, the colors created something neither could achieve alone. It's us, Elena said when she noticed him watching. How we started separately but became something different together. Adrian moved behind her, wrapping his arms carefully around her waist. His side still ached, but he was healing. It's beautiful, like you. It's complicated. Like us. She leaned back against him. I'm calling it redemption. Presumptuous. I'm not redeemed yet. You're working on it. That's what matters. They stood there, watching the sunset paint the ocean in shades of gold and crimson. I've been thinking, Adrian said quietly, about your father. Elena tensed. What about him? You should see him. Talk to him. Adrian's arms tightened slightly. Not to forgive him if you're not ready, but to get closure, so you can move forward without that weight. I don't know if I can face him. You faced down armed attackers. You sat vigil while I was dying. You can face one broken man. Adrian turned her to face him. And I'll go with you if you want. You don't have to do it alone. Elena searched his eyes, finding only support and understanding. When? Whenever you're ready. 2 days later, they flew to Rome. The treatment facility was nice, expensive, clearly paid for by Adrian. Her father was in a private room with a view of gardens, looking smaller and older than Elena remembered. When he saw her, tears filled his eyes. Elena, my little girl. His voice broke. I'm so sorry. For everything. Elena stood in the doorway, Adrian a steady presence at her back, and felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Anger, grief, love, betrayal, all of it warring inside her. Why? She asked simply. Why did you do it? Her father's hands shook as he gestured to a chair. Please sit, both of you. They sat, and her father told his story. The gambling had started after her mother's death, a way to escape grief. Small bets at first, then larger ones, then loans from the wrong people, desperation spiraling into despair. They came to me with an offer, he said, his voice barely audible. Pay the debt or offer collateral. I convinced myself that they just wanted insurance, that I'd pay them back before they ever collected. But you didn't, Elena said flatly. I couldn't. The debt grew faster than I could earn, And by the time I realized what I'd really done, it was too late. Tears tracked down his weathered face. I told myself you'd be okay, that whoever bought you would treat you well. I lied to myself because the truth was unbearable. The truth that you sold your daughter to save yourself. Yes. Her father looked at Adrian. When I heard who'd bought you, I researched everything I could about Adrian Romano. Criminal, yes, but also fair. Known for protecting women, for having lines he wouldn't cross. I told myself that made it better. It didn't, Elena said. I know. Nothing makes it better. Her father's voice cracked. I destroyed your life to save mine. That's the truth. And I'll spend the rest of my days trying to atone for it, knowing I never can. Elena sat in silence, processing. Part of her wanted to rage, to scream at him for his selfishness. But another part, the part that had learned about complicated morality from loving Adrian, understood that people weren't simply good or evil. They were broken, making terrible choices, trying to survive. I don't forgive you, she said finally. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I understand why you did it. Her father nodded, accepting that. That's more than I deserve. It is. Elena stood. I'm leaving now. I might come back someday. I might not. But you need to know, despite everything, I survived. I found something real in the wreckage you created. So in a twisted way, your worst choice led to my best life. She turned to leave, and her father's voice stopped her. Does he treat you well, Romano? Elena looked at Adrian, this man who'd bought her and loved her and changed his entire life for her. He treats me like I'm everything, she said simply. Outside, Elena broke down in Adrian's arms, crying for the father she'd lost, and the innocence she could never reclaim. I've got you, Adrian murmured into her hair. You're safe. You're loved. I've got you. When the tears finally stopped, Elena felt lighter. The wound hadn't healed, but it had been acknowledged, cleaned, given air to breathe. Thank you, she said, for making me do that. You did it yourself. I just stood nearby. That's all I needed. They flew back to the fortress that evening, both of them exhausted but somehow more complete. The months that followed were a whirlwind of change. Adrian systematically dismantled his criminal empire, working with lawyers and accountants to legitimize what could be saved and dissolve what couldn't. Some of his former associates understood, others didn't. There were threats, attempts at sabotage, moments when Elena feared they'd never truly be free. But Adrian was relentless, and he wasn't alone. His legitimate business partners, seeing a chance to invest in his legal ventures, offered support. Dr. Rousseau's foundation became a major project, funded generously and positioned as Adrian's attempt at redemption. The media coverage shifted. Adrian Romano was no longer just a suspected crime lord. He was a complicated figure, possibly reforming, definitely interesting. Elena watched him transform, shedding violence like a snake sheds skin. It wasn't easy. Sometimes she'd find him on his balcony at 3 a.m, whiskey in hand, wrestling with who he'd been and who he was becoming. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted one night. Be normal. Be good. You don't have to be good, Elena said, taking the whiskey and setting it aside. You just have to be better than you were. That's enough. Is it? It is for me. 6 months after Victor's death, after Adrian's shooting, after the world learned their secret and they survived anyway, Elena discovered she was pregnant. She stared at the test in her bathroom, hands shaking, mind racing. This wasn't planned. They'd been so careful, but somewhere between healing and building a new life, careful had become careless. She found Adrian in his study, working on contracts for a new shipping venture. Completely legitimate, thoroughly boring, exactly what he needed to be. We need to talk, she said. Adrian looked up, immediately sensing something serious. What's wrong? Elena crossed to his desk, setting the pregnancy test down between them. For a long moment, Adrian just stared at it. Then his eyes lifted to hers, wide with shock. You're pregnant. I'm pregnant. We're going to have a baby. Yes. Adrian stood slowly, moving around the desk like he was in a dream. When he reached her, his hands came up to frame her face with a gentleness that still surprised her. How do you feel about this? He asked carefully. Terrified. excited, completely unprepared. Elena's hands covered his. How do you feel? The same. All of that and more. His thumb brushed her cheek. A baby. Our baby. Are you ready to be a father? Adrian was quiet for a moment, honest vulnerability in his expression. I don't know. My own father was absent. My mother died young. I have no blueprint for this. But Elena, I want to try. I want to be the father this child deserves. Even if it's hard? Especially if it's hard. He pulled her close, his hand settling over her still flat stomach. This child will know they're loved. They'll know they're safe. They'll never wonder if they matter. Elena's tears came again, happy this time. We're really doing this. We're really doing this. Adrian kissed her softly. Everything I've been building, the legitimate businesses, the foundation, this new life, it's all for our family now. Family, Elena repeated, the word feeling like home. That night, they lay in bed planning a future they'd never imagined. Nursery colors and baby names, schooling and values. Adrian admitted his fears, that he'd be too controlling, too protective, unable to let their child make mistakes. Elena admitted hers, that she'd be too permissive, trying to give their child the freedom she'd lost. We'll balance each other, Adrian said, like we always do. What if we mess them up? Then they'll have great material for therapy. Adrian's smile was soft. But seriously, we survived impossible odds. We turned a trafficking transaction into love. If we can do that, we can probably handle parenting. Probably isn't very reassuring. It's the best I've got. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But I promise you this. I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of you and this child. That's not probably. That's certain. The pregnancy transformed Adrian in ways Elena hadn't anticipated. He became obsessively protective but tried to hide it, following her around the fortress, making sure she didn't lift anything heavy or climb stairs too quickly. He read every pregnancy book he could find, attending doctor's appointments with questions that made the physicians laugh. Mr. Romano, most fathers don't ask about placental blood flow, her obstetrician said at one visit. Most fathers don't have my resources, Adrian replied seriously. I want to know everything. He hired a nutritionist to ensure Elena ate properly, a prenatal yoga instructor, even a doula for when the time came. Elena found it simultaneously endearing and exhausting. I'm pregnant, not made of glass, she protested when he tried to carry her up the stairs. Humor me, I've never done this before. Neither have I. Exactly. So we're both overreacting together. As her belly grew, so did their excitement. They converted a room near their bedroom into a nursery, soft colors, nothing too gendered, with windows overlooking the ocean. Elena painted a mural on one wall, abstract shapes that suggested waves and sky, possibility and freedom. Adrian watched her paint, his hand resting on her swollen stomach, feeling their daughter kick. She's strong, he murmured. Just like her mother. Or stubborn like her father. Same thing. He pressed a kiss to Elena's neck. What should we name her? They'd been debating names for weeks. Elena wanted something Italian, honoring her heritage. Adrian wanted something that meant strength or freedom, something aspirational. What about Sophia? Elena suggested. It means wisdom. Sophia Romano. Adrian tested it, then smiled. I like it. Sophia Elena Romano. Elena? After the strongest woman I know, the one who saved me. His arms tightened around her. Our daughter should have that strength in her name. Elena turned in his arms, tears streaming down her face again. Hormones made her cry at everything these days. You really think I saved you? I know you did. I was dead long before I met you, just walking and breathing, but not alive. Adrian's hand cradled her face. You brought me back to life. You made me want to be better. How is that not saving? They named her Sophia Elena Romano, and she was born on a Tuesday morning in early spring, arriving 3 weeks early and screaming with impressive lungs. Adrian held his daughter for the first time with hands that had killed men, built empires, and bought the woman he loved. Now those same hands cradled new life, and Elena saw him transform completely. She's perfect, he whispered, tears streaming down his face unashamedly. She's absolutely perfect. Elena watched from the hospital bed, exhausted but elated, as the most dangerous man she'd ever known became the gentlest father imaginable. Sophia had Adrian's gray eyes and Elena's dark hair, and from day one she owned them both completely. Those first weeks were chaos, sleepless nights, constant feedings, learning to navigate parenthood together. But they figured it out, taking turns with midnight wakings, supporting each other through exhaustion and anxiety. Adrian was a natural, despite his fears. He changed diapers with the same efficiency he'd once negotiated deals. He learned to swaddle, to soothe, to read Sophia's tiny cries and know exactly what she needed. "You're good at this," Elena said one night, watching him rock their daughter to sleep. "I'm terrified every second." "So am I, but look at her. She's thriving." Adrian looked down at Sophia's sleeping face, wonder in his expression. "I never thought I'd have this. A family, something pure and good that came from me. She came from both of us. All the broken parts made something whole." 6 months after Sophia's birth, Adrian finalized the last of his business transitions. Every criminal operation was either legitimized or dissolved. His empire now consisted of shipping companies, real estate investments, and the foundation. All legal, all clean. He came home that evening to find Elena in the nursery, Sophia babbling in her crib while Elena showed her the ocean through the window. "It's done," Adrian said from the doorway. "All of it. I'm officially legitimate." Elena turned, Sophia in her arms, and smiled. "How does it feel?" "Strange. Lighter." He crossed to them, pressing a kiss to Sophia's head, then Elena's lips. "Like I can finally breathe." "No regrets?" "Only that I didn't do it sooner." Adrian took Sophia, who immediately grabbed his finger with surprising strength. "But then again, if I had, I might never have met you." "Everything happens for a reason?" "I don't know about that. But I know that somehow, impossibly, my worst choice led to my best life." He looked at Elena, love and gratitude in his eyes. "You and Sophia, you're everything. Everything else was just noise." That summer, they left the fortress. Not permanently, it would always be their sanctuary. But they bought a villa in Tuscany, smaller and warmer, surrounded by vineyards and olive groves. A place where Sophia could run free, where they could build memories untainted by violence. The fortress remained their winter home, their retreat, but the villa became their heart. Elena opened a small gallery in the nearby town, showcasing her own work and other local artists. It never made much money, but that wasn't the point. It was hers, something she'd built with her own hands, her own vision. Adrian threw himself into the foundation, working directly with Dr. Rousseau to expand their reach. They opened 3 new facilities in the first year, helping hundreds of women escape trafficking and rebuild their lives. "I'm trying to balance the scales," Adrian admitted to Elena one evening as they watched Sophia play in the garden. "For every woman I couldn't save, including my mother, I want to save 10 more." "You can't save everyone." "No, but I can try." Elena took his hand, lacing their fingers together. "You're a good man, Adrian Romano." "I'm a man trying to be good. There's a difference. Not to me, not anymore." 2 years after Sophia's birth, Elena found herself pregnant again. This time it was planned, wanted, a conscious choice to expand their family. Adrian was simultaneously thrilled and panicked, reverting to his overprotective tendencies with renewed vigor. "We know what we're doing now," Elena reminded him when he tried to carry her groceries. "We've done this before." "Doesn't make it less terrifying." Their son was born in December, arriving during a snowstorm that blanketed Tuscany in rare white. They named him Marco, after Elena's grandfather, and he had her green eyes and Adrian's serious expression. Sophia, now 2, was fascinated by her baby brother, insisting on helping with everything. Adrian and Elena watched their children together, marveling at the impossible family they'd built. "This is what I bought for 2 million euros, Adrian said one evening, Sophia asleep on his lap while Elena nursed Marco. "Not just you, this entire life, this family, this future." "Best investment you ever made?" "Only investment that ever mattered." Years passed in a blur of school plays and skinned knees, of teaching Sophia to paint and Marco to read. The children grew up knowing their parents' story, age-appropriately edited, but honest. They knew their father had done bad things, that their mother had been brave, that love could come from the darkest places. Sophia inherited her mother's artistic talent, spending hours in the studio painting worlds that existed only in her imagination. Marco inherited his father's strategic mind, always thinking 3 steps ahead, already negotiating with surprising skill at age 5. "We made good humans," Elena said one night, watching their children sleep. "We did." Adrian pulled her close. "Better than either of us had any right to make. They'll change the world. Or at least their corner of it." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "Like their mother changed mine." On their 10th wedding anniversary, Adrian surprised Elena with a trip back to Milan. Not to the places of her captivity. Those were behind them. But to her university, the parks where she used to sketch, the cafes where she dreamed of futures that never happened. "Why are we here?" Elena asked as they walked the streets of her past. "Because I wanted you to see how far you've come." Adrian stopped in front of her old apartment building. 10 years ago, you were a girl with dreams. Then I stole those dreams." "Adrian, let me finish." He took her hands. "I stole your dreams, but you built new ones, better ones. You turned a nightmare into a family, a prison into a home. You didn't just survive me, Elena. You transformed me." Tears filled her eyes. "We transformed each other." "We did, and I wanted to come back here, to where it started, and tell you something." Adrian pulled a small box from his pocket. "I bought you once, paid a fortune to own you, and it was the worst thing I ever did, and the best thing that ever happened to me." He opened the box. Inside was a new ring, delicate, beautiful, nothing like the heavy platinum band from their forced wedding. "But now I want to ask. Not demand, not buy. Ask." Adrian's voice shook slightly. "Elena Vieri Romano, mother of my children, love of my life, will you marry me? Again? By choice this time?" Elena's tears spilled over. "We're already married. Legally, but not by choice, not freely." He slipped the new ring on beside the old one. "I want you to choose me, the way I choose you every day." "Yes." Elena's voice was fierce. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. I choose you, Adrian Romano. I choose this impossible life we built. I choose all of it." They married again in a small ceremony in Tuscany, surrounded by friends and family. Sophia and Marco were part of the wedding party, standing proud as their parents exchanged vows that were real this time, chosen, true doctor. Rousseau attended along with several women from the foundation, women Adrian had saved who'd built new lives from wreckage. Marcus came, now running Adrian's legitimate shipping operations. Even Isabella was there, having divorced her sociopath husband and started over. It was a celebration of not just marriage, but of transformation, of people who'd been broken and found ways to heal, of love that grew in impossible soil. As they danced under string lights in the villa's garden, Elena looked at Adrian and saw their entire journey reflected in his eyes. "Any regrets?" she asked. "None." He pulled her closer. "Well, maybe buying you instead of wooing you properly. But I like to think I made up for it." "You did, in about 1,000 different ways." "Only 1,000? I'm slipping." Elena laughed, and the sound was pure joy. "I love you, you impossible man." "I love you too. My salvation, my everything." Years later, when Sophia was in university studying art history and Marco was in secondary school already talking about social justice law, Elena would look back on that auction night and marvel at the journey. She'd been sold like property, claimed by a monster trapped in a gilded cage. But somehow, impossibly, that cage had become a home. That monster had become a man. And that girl with shattered dreams had become a woman who'd helped build something beautiful from ashes. Adrian had changed everything. His businesses now focused on legitimate trade and helping trafficking victims. The foundation had expanded internationally, saving hundreds of women each year. He'd become known not as a crime lord, but as a philanthropist, a reformed man trying to balance terrible scales. But more than that, he'd become a father who read bedtime stories and taught his children that mistakes didn't define you, your response to them did. A husband who still brought Elena paintbrushes from his travels and kissed her like she was precious. A man who'd chosen goodness not because it was easy, but because someone believed he could. On quiet evenings, they'd sit on the terrace overlooking the Tuscan hills, watching the sunset paint the world in shades of gold. Do you ever think about what your life would have been? Adrian asked one such evening. If I hadn't bought you? Elena considered. Sometimes, I'd probably be teaching somewhere, painting on weekends, living a safe, quiet life. Do you wish for that? Not even a little. She laced her fingers through his. This life, our life, is messy and complicated and built on impossible foundations, but it's real. It's ours, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Even knowing how it started? Especially knowing how it started, because it proves that nothing is beyond redemption. Not you, not me, not us. Elena turned to face him. We took something terrible and made it beautiful. That's our story. That's our triumph. Adrian pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared beyond the hills. Their story had begun with a price tag and ended with priceless love. It had started with captivity and ended with freedom. It had transformed a monster into a man, a victim into a survivor, and two broken people into a family. Elena had been bought for 2 million euros. But what they'd built together was worth infinitely more. And in the end, that made all the difference.